Hi, everybody. It's SunDAVE Sit Down. Now, I know some of you are like, but I'm already sitting. I'm like, get in your goddamn seat, all right? Because we're going to talk about one of the most classic comics of all time. Yes, that is The Killing Joke. Let's just get right into it. I have a couple of friends here, so let me introduce them. First on the screen is Carrie. Carrie Jobs. Hi, Carrie.
Hello, Dave.
Hi. And then, of course, our esteemed son. There he is. Angel.
Let me call you back. Let me call you back. This guy wants me to do the show with him.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Important right there.
That was actually my lawyer.
Oh.
I'm being sued for being too sexy.
I actually, I believe that.
Yeah.
Because you thought you were
Carrie?
the internet.
Yeah, that's right. We breaking the net, baby. I'm gonna do those. I'm gonna remake those Kim Kardashian photos when she broke the internet. I'm gonna do those like tomorrow.
Well, I hope you've been working on your glutes. A couple of things before we get started. You can find both East Bay and Carrie's Instagram links at the bottom in the description below. They are very comic-centric Instagrams, are almost completely comic-centric Instagrams. Every once in a while, Angel posts a photo of like, his beard, and we're all just like, "Come on, dude."
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, we get it. You think
it's looking very trimmed and very.
Yeah, well, I tried to. Well, Dave was super trimmed the last time I went live with him on his YouTube, and I go, you know what? I got to be on that level. So I trimmed it up so I wouldn't look so scruff.
Johnny's in the house. And then lastly, I mean, for anybody that's watching this that doesn't know, don't forget to like, but I dropped a video this morning, and I don't know if either of you saw it. It's only like 10 minutes long, but I got a Batman Grail, one of the biggest books I've ever owned. It's Detective 140, First Riddler, and I did a flip through of it. And that was a lot of fun to look inside a book that was 75 years old.
That's insane.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And other than that, let's just get right to it. We are going to be talking about, this is, by the way, the second iteration, I don't know what you want to call it, the second episode of the Davengers Book Club, and we are going to be talking about Alan Moore and Brian Bolland's The Killing Joke. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, singular Batman Joker story ever told. I don't know, what either of you feel about it. I am a diehard Batman fan, so this book is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, no, this book is. So I'm not traditionally a DC reader, and I think I told you about this when I kind of started. So Chip Zdarsky started writing Batman recently, right? On the current run. I'm a Zdarsky head for sure. So when I found out that he was writing Batman, I started buying it. I think it started on 126, Batman 126 of the current run. So I picked up 126, and it was only like 2 issues into it, and I've been reading it since. And dude, it's good. It's good. So it's gotten me to like grab some Batman stuff, like Todd McFarlane read that Batman 423, I think it is.
Sure.
And, Killing Joke. I've had a couple of these. This copy in particular, I actually got from our buddy Trip Power.
Oh, nice.
This awesome second print here, fucking beautiful shape. And this is the one that I read, right? So I've read this a couple times through already. I did a recap of it today, and yeah, it stands the test of time, man. It's good. It is fucking good. A really good story.
This question's kind of both of you, and this is just a kind of curiosity thing. Is this the first time either of you read this, or do you remember when the first time either of you read this?
Yeah, so I actually have a funny story. This is actually the first comic that, like, when Aaron and I first started dating many moons ago, before we got married and all of that, this is actually the first. I was not into comics at all, so this was actually the first book that Aaron tried to get me to read.
Intro to comics. Oh my god!
Right. That's what I was telling Dave. I'm like, really, out of all the books, like, I should have been like the massive red flag right there, right? So,
yeah.
So
what's this guy's intention here?
I know, right? So I never actually read it. Like, I think I read like the first like 3 panels and was like, I don't get it. This is ridiculous. And I put it away, and I never touched it until now. So it was really funny, and it kind of came full circle. Yep. And so then I read it, and then we watched the animated movie last night, which I have my own opinions about. But it was just really funny that, like, that was the first book. And I remember vividly, like, putting it on my nightstand and him being like, "How was it?" I was like, "Great,
Yeah,
great."
good. The second day. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so funny. Yeah, full circle, man. That's crazy. That's nuts. This book, my older cousin had this book. So we have this. Okay, so some of you guys are, I know you two are familiar with Yellow Beanie Comics and
Mhm.
Outwork, right, Mike? So we have this movie going crew now. We go see all the Marvel movies when they come out. But one of the guys in the crew is my cousin Nick, who's not necessarily into comics now anymore, but he does enjoy the movies. But when we were kids, he had all the action figures, a couple books, right? So this was one of the ones that he showed me when I was a kid. So this came out in 88, I think it was, 88, 89. This must have been 90, oh, I don't know, 97, 98. Maybe I was young. I was born in 92, right? So I'm like 6 years old, kind of
Mhm.
flipping through it, right? Not necessarily reading it, but flipping through it and just looking at the art and just being like, wow, this looks insanely scary. Batman was huge, right, in the 90s. My shit was, right, Mask of the Phantasm, stuff like that. That's what the stuff that I was,
Sure.
watching and stuff that I grew up on. So when I saw this that long ago, I just, what sticks out the most is the cover, right? That's like the most, I mean, just prominent image of this book. And I didn't read it again, or I didn't read it for the first time technically until maybe a year and a half ago, right? Because predominantly I'm Marvel guy, Marvel indie stuff, but DC not really, right? And yeah, when I read it, man, it just kind of struck one of those nerves where I was just like, wow, this is really good. It's really dark and you know,
This and this book, I mean, there's a lot of history behind this book. It came out what, 86. I read this probably. I read this probably. No, it didn't come out in 86. I'm sorry, it came out in 89 or 90. Let me just see the indicia in here and see what year it is. Originally published in. Okay, come on, give me a date here. 88. Okay, so
I was gonna say 87. I was like, ugh,
yeah, it's in the late 80s.
yeah.
I didn't read this as a kid. I read this probably as a teenager. My friend gave it to me. As I feel like everybody who's introduced to this book late, like different story if you're, 13 years old in 1987 or whatever. But I feel like everybody that was introduced to this book late got it from a friend or was, given to it by somebody. Like it wasn't like you walked into a comic store and you're like, whoa, I'm gonna buy this even though I have no clue what it is, in 1995. But when I read this, I was just like, my mind was completely blown. It was the first Alan Moore I ever read, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Brian Bolland's artwork. And Jesus, like it's just an unreal combination of two monsters at the craft,
and really two dynamic artists in their own way, right? Like, so Brian Bolland, he's from across the pond. He's from the UK.
They're both. Yeah.
Well, they both are, yeah, for sure. But I think, well, Alan Moore, he's got Swamp Thing, he's got he's got all kinds of stuff that is in mainstream comics. Whereas Brian Bolland didn't really have any of that too much, right? He did some, like, he was kind of a cover artist, sure. He did some Captain Britain, but that was over there, not the American Captain Britain, right? And what was one of the things?
Judge Dredd.
Judge Dredd, that's right, Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was in the forefront as much as Alan Moore was. But you put two of these powerhouses together on this book, man, and it's just, I mean, just if I could say one word that describes it, it's just gritty. It's just gritty, right?
It is
on both aspects, right? On the writing, on the art, it's just gritty, and you put those two things together, dude, and it is just so powerful and just like, whoa, right? Whoa, it's cool.
It's funny you say gritty because even though that's spelled differently, the first thing I want to talk about is the first 2 pages of this book in the 9-panel grids.
Yep.
With no words whatsoever, and it sets a mood. You already know you already feel something when you read these first 18 panels. You're like, oh damn, this is a Batman book. This is
it's
what it feels like.
Right. You have Gordon, you're right. You have Commish. What happened?
We lost the carry.
Oh, no, the Wi-Fi is down. You have the Commish. I mean, he's right walking after Batman, right? Bats is walking through the asylum, and he's holding his hat, right? And this is true to, like, going back to the art, right? How an artist can tell a story without using any words, right? Well, there you go, right there. With 18 panels, right? We know and we feel those feelings of anxiety, of urgency.
Welcome back.
I don't know what happened. My whole screen just went black.
Like, oh, East Bay's talking, I'm gonna go.
Gotta go now.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. This grid it's insane, man. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's and we're like it almost is, and it's almost crazy to think how if this book had no dialogue in it,
Right.
we'd still be able to read it real well,
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know.
For
Uh,
sure.
but I don't, and I know I don't. I'm assuming Kerry, you're seeing the recolored version, but
Mhm.
Angel, I don't know if you're seeing the recolored version. So um, they when they redid this, Bolland wasn't happy with the original color job by I forget his name, Wiggins maybe
John
John
Higgins.
Wiggins
Mhm.
Higgins,
Yeah,
A-
Higgins.
and he was not happy with it. So when they started to the anniversary, I don't remember what anniversary it was. He asked DC if he could recolor it for the new edition, and every edition is printed in the last 10 years has Bolland's colors, which I get it. I completely get it.
Yeah. I don't
I
think I haven't seen that one. I don't think because this one, the one that I have is I have a first print at home, or had a first print. I think I ended up selling it. But this is the second print, so this is the original Higgins coloring. But I haven't seen Bolland's coloring on it. But
here's
I like this coloring though.
and
Yeah.
Oh, there we
you
go.
know
Okay. Yeah, I
here's
see.
the difference on
I see
it,
what you
but
mean.
what really pops is the flashback scenes. When you get to the
Sure.
flashback scenes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When it's
I
more
like I like
time.
the recolored version.
Right. Okay.
So okay, so it opens up, you know, there you go. So Josh was wondering about the differences in coloring, and Bolland has talked about it at length in several different interviews you can watch or read. But yeah, it opens with Batman entering Arkham and just kind of going right past everybody, right into Joker's cell.
Mhm.
All right. So Andrew said he read it as a kid a few years after it came out. Hadn't seen anything like it. I remember feeling confused and a little scared of it. You
That's
know,
fair.
that's very fair as a kid. It's also fair to say that as an adult.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. I feel like just that last sentence. I remember feeling confused and a little scared of it. I feel like that's my entire childhood, right? Like just about everything. I'm confused. I'm also a little scared. You know what I mean?
I love that. I mean, it's this book and this story. Everything about it is meant to unsettle you in
Yeah,
every way, shape, or form.
yeah.
Um, in the dialogue, in the imagery, in the actions of the Joker, even the
Mhm.
actions of Batman in this are meant
Right,
to unsettle you.
for sure. And I think that that was one of Alan Moore's thing, where in a time where you have heroes being heroes all the time, no matter what, right? Alan Moore kind of flipped it on his head and said, "Well, what happens when we stop doing those hero tropes and let's make a new trope, right? A trope of darkness and a trope of all these other things." Which I read a while ago that he kind of regretted doing that, and it kind of became a standard of storytelling after that, right? And making these kind of darker, real, right? And he was just like, "Well, that wasn't my intention to change an industry like that, but I mean, I guess it happened that way." And I think it's really interesting that this was kind of like one of those first to really blow the fucking hinges off of superhero storytelling.
It was, I mean, there's two people that did it in the same company, and it was him and Miller.
Yeah,
I
Mhm.
mean,
right.
Dark Knight Returns, um, this book, Watchmen, and
Yeah,
Year One. When you
yeah,
look at the four of those, they and I'm not the first. I won't be the last to say like the two of them changed comics forever,
absolutely.
I
forever.
agree with that.
Yeah, there's what they did between the years of like 85 and 89 at DC was I hope we see it again one day, but I don't know if we'll ever see it like that.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I think mainly because we're living in the time right now, but also I can't think of any writers or artists who are. I just feel like the market is so like convoluted, right? Where it's like it's hard to kind of pinpoint those certain things. I feel like Zdarsky's doing a really good job. I think not just on Batman, but just in general.
Yeah.
His storytelling is really good. He gets into some pretty good thought provoking stuff, but and there's a couple other writers, right? Like one of my favorites, Jonathan Hickman. I mean, he's a
Mhm.
genius though, right? He's like super smart, and he kind of puts that aspect into his storytelling too, which is cool. So yeah, it's hard to imagine writers now doing the stuff that these guys were doing back in the 80s.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And Mike brings up a good point, which is one of the notes that I made. Is this the template for the now classic Batman interrogation scenes? It's one of the first I remember. Not just that, but this is a direct influence. And obviously, you look at Year One, you look at Dark Knight, and you look at this book, and everything that's been put to screen or video game for Batman was influenced by those books. And when we look back at interrogation scene of Christian Bale and Heath Ledger,
Right.
and the famous "Where's Rachel?" I mean, it's right there. It's right there. You
Yeah.
just
Right, yeah,
replace Rachel for
He.
he.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
You know, and so it's really the influence of this book and this story. It can be stated over and over again, but it can be proven over and over again.
Right. No, for sure.
Yeah.
And also, just real quick before you turn the page, so what I want to look at is Bolland's. I mean, the artistry is so insane, dude.
So good.
Illustrations are crazy. Where he can. I'm getting all worked up because it's just really insane to me when you're reading this book or kind of looking at any of his other work, but this one in particular, the way that he captures emotions, dude.
Oh my gosh.
Is insane. I mean, look at so for those of you guys who have read this book, so right now in the story, what's happening essentially is Batman, right? He's going to interrogate Joker, and I'm sure Dave will get into a little bit here. But he's going to interrogate Joker. It turns out, right, he smears off the makeup of this guy, right? We know that Joker, the real Joker, right? That's just what he looks like, right? He's not painting his face every day. So he smears off the face of this guy, and he realizes, oh, this isn't him. Now look at that dude's face on the top, on the top third panel. I mean, just straight fright. Like, what the fuck? What did I get myself into?
Yeah.
Oh my god. This vigilante, right? The Cape Crusader all up on my, all up on my grill right now. And then you go down a couple panels where Jim Gordon, he busts in the interrogation room and he's saying basically, leave him alone.
Mhm.
That's not how we do things here. We're gonna go by the book and this and that. And then the look on Gordon's face of just pure shock and disparity, really, when he realizes that's not Joker, is crazy, man. Zoom in on that panel.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Look at his face.
Mhm.
So good. I mean, that looks like a picture.
I know.
You catch someone by surprise and take a picture of them. That's what you're saying.
I have a lot of those. I used to do that all the time when I was a kid. My family, just take
Yeah.
pictures
Boom.
of my family. Yep.
Yeah.
I have more pictures of my mom like this than I do of her not looking like
Right,
that.
Yeah. Well, you might be the Joker. Yeah, you might.
Yeah,
You
definitely
gotta
something.
You
It's always been.
It all makes sense now.
Yeah, it does. But it's just, yeah, and this right here. Oh my God.
Mhm.
I mean, what does that say to you when you see that? That's just like, oh, yeah, this guy couldn't be the Joker. No way, because he doesn't look like that.
That boy built like Jello. That boy's soft. Okay, yeah. Compared to the panel there, and I think any dynamic storytelling with art, right? You have a panel where it's 3D and pops out of frame. Oh yeah, you're like, oh, this is real. We're getting into the nitty gritty of this, right? And I love those panels. There's a couple of panels like that he does where it's not in frame, right? Where it kind of breaks those frames a little bit and kind of puts it in your face, like boom, I'm here, right? It's really good.
It's a visual masterpiece.
Yeah.
Josh, all it does take is one bad day. That's true. We will get to that. Okay, so here we go. We've got the scene. We know the Joker's escaped. Now the Joker is telling this guy that he wants to buy this amusement park, and it immediately
so eerie. Like, I don't know. As soon as he walked into it, I was like, oh, shit's gonna go down.
Yeah,
you can feel it. Like you physically take it on when you read it, which just tells about the art in the story.
Yeah,
it does. And I want to talk about, speaking about the art, the transitions. Now, Alan Moore is known for writing the best transitional page flips.
Yeah.
Having to do with the art. And if you read Watchmen, you see it all over Watchmen where, the last panel of a page goes right into something that it's a transition. So we get the bottom right panel looking at the fat lady. And then as soon as you flip the page, the first panel is his pregnant wife or girlfriend. Yeah. Now, obviously, two different versions of physicality there, but the sentiment is the same as the transition into that.
And it happens with every transition of them going back, right? And then doing the flashbacks. That's what you're getting. And it's kind of interesting, and we'll come to the page a little bit later on, but one that I saw that was kind of a little more subtle than what we're seeing. And I think part of it too. So you were talking about the page flip with it, which I think is interesting, and which takes place on every single transition except for the page that you're holding, or the page on the right hand side, on that bottom, on the other side, on the other page there, on the next page over, 11, on that page. So if you notice, it goes back to present day, and the two panels are next to each other.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why he did that, and I could be wrong, but this is part of comics, right? Is kind of decide, or just with reading stuff in general, is kind of coming up with your own kind of conclusions and thinking of why, right? I think honestly is because I don't think a lot of people would catch that necessarily going from page to page and saying, "Oh yeah, this is a transition right into something else," because it's a totally different environment, it's totally different everything. But I think they put it right next to each other so that you can actually clearly see that that's what you're doing. That's the device they're using, right? Is that transitional thing? That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Mike said it would be interesting to know how much of the transition is more. It's both of them, because more scripts, and you can read the deluxe, or I forget, the deluxe edition has the script, and you can read Alan Moore's script, and he writes those transitions in, because Gibbons was doing the same thing on Watchmen, even more so. I feel like every page was a transition. Now, I'd love to hear both of your interpretations of this.
Yes.
Having read this scene specifically, because I have multiple feelings about this.
Yeah. Karen, you go first.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up on my side. Let's see. I think, okay, well, I don't want to jump too far ahead into the story either, but I feel as though we're starting to see like the breakdown of him, and we're starting to see like the mental breakdown and because I feel like, and this is actually a question I had for you guys later on that I wrote in my very short notes, unlike than you, but you guys, but was essentially when okay, I'm gonna hold off until we get to that point because I don't want to go ahead.
I think you and I are having the same. We both have the same things to say, because there is something about this scene that made me, after reading it, I went back and I'm like, something about this scene is off.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. But then I feel like when he actually turns into the Joker in a sense, right? Like once we get later on into the story, maybe this is like my clinical background coming in, but I feel like there's like a psychotic break, essentially. Like he's going into a psychotic break. It's easier. And that comes up later in the story with some of the stuff that he talks to Jim Gordon about. But essentially, like I feel like this is when we're starting to see the decline of the Joker as a human. Yeah. And this is when we're starting to see like the mental emotional pressures that he's feeling, and then compounded with everything that happens later on when he actually when we see the other flashback scenes. I think everything compounded, essentially, like it's that snap, it's what everything kind of combined. But I also I felt that, like I felt like I read this scene and I could not relate to it, but you feel it.
Yeah,
you feel it, like, and maybe this is me being like, I felt like I was in both of their positions. Like you can actually put yourself in their shoes. But I do feel as though this is the part where Alan Moore does a great job at depicting the emotional pressures that's on him right now.
Okay, couple of things I want to ask you guys about. Well, okay, sorry, Angel, what did this scene do for you?
For me, and going back to my childhood trauma. Well, one of the first things. Okay, so if you read this panel, okay, so in the first three panels, right, and he walks in, his wife, right. Well, how did it go? Did they like your act? And basically, so what she's referring to is he had a stand-up comedy act, and right, that's what he wanted to pursue. And he says, well, they said they might call me, and he says, I don't know, I got nervous and I messed up a punchline, and she says, oh, and then he turns around because his back is facing her on that top. He turns around, he says, what do you mean, oh? And then she says, you know, I didn't mean it. The way you said it, oh, like that. Now, I grew up in a house where, I shouldn't say this too loud, but I grew up in a house where it was very passive aggressive, right? So, I mean, just the way someone said, oh, the way someone walked down the hallway, right? And picking up on those little notions, right? That stem from something, right? And that's the first thing that I noticed when I read this part here. Yes, it is a psychotic break, but also too, you know, what is their kind of relationship like, right? There's the pressures of having a baby, right? And Carrie and I, right, we know those pressures, right? I don't know from your perspective, but there's those pressures that are on top of and they kind of get into it here, not being able to afford anything, right? Living in a bumfuck apartment, and having those pressures, and really feeling. You got to remember, this came out in 88, right? So it was very, and Alan Moore's gotten shit for it later on about it being very divisive and very misogynistic, right, at times. And it kind of is, right, still, where it's like a man's job is to provide for his family no matter what, which is kind of a value that I kind of hold true, not in like a misogynistic kind of way, but just like I do feel that pressure on me to constantly be working, to constantly be bringing food to the table, to be making sure my kids are okay, right? So for this man, right, pre-Joker, for this man to feel all those feelings and not feel good enough, not feel appreciated, not feel funny in his case, not feel all those things, yeah, he's gonna break, right? He's gonna start to break down and feel like he can't, like he's not worth anything. And it was really powerful, man. It was really, really powerful. And then he has a wife who supports him, and a wife who says it's okay. It's really, really, it's okay.
That's perfectly well said.
It is. It is.
I just want to like think the clapping emoji. I just want to.
Couple of things I wanted to point out about this. First off, the only color is the light, and what looks like she's eating is maybe octopus or shitty shrimp. And it's funny because when you look at the next page, he's eating the prawns.
That's right.
So there's that transition. But the thing that exactly. Okay, so Mike, you kind of just took my point from me. He makes this joke about a prostitute being able to earn that in a weekend without having to tell a single joke. She starts laughing, and this is why I think that when he talks about, I am going to jump ahead a little bit narratively, when he talks about memory and the past and breaking and madness is the way out. This is it right here, because look at her face.
Sure,
she's
laughing. That's so good. Yeah,
she's laughing at the joke. This isn't what really happened.
Right. And if you look if you look at it, going back to the face, if you look at her face, it's that stone faced laugh, right? And we see that pop up later on in the book. So keep that in mind, right? Where you'll see him force other people to do that stone faced laugh too, right?
And it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like reality.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people's, right? And I don't think this book, I think it's been, I don't want to say retcon because I don't read DC like that, but I think it's been kind of considered a standalone, right? Something Elseworld kind of thing, right? And I think that's a lot of people's thoughts too, where it's like, is this really a flashback, or is this him, creating these memories or creating these jokes or whatever it may be, right? And I think that offers the imagination so much more, right? And going back to what I said earlier, comics or just reading in general is what you make of it, and how you're perceiving these things and how you're understanding these things, and what kind of fun you want to have with it, or what kind of, in my case, childhood trauma you want to get from it, right? It's good, man. It's really good.
I also love, oh, sorry.
No, Dave, you can go on.
I just want to point out, it's hard to see, but I always love that little thing that just says, just put a penny in the slot. that, if I saw that on a vending machine, I would 100%. But okay, Carrie, I'm sorry.
I wouldn't even ask any questions. So, okay, you got it.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Carrie?
I feel like as the story progresses too, like this, and I think you kind of touched on it, Dave, and Angel, but where you do feel that sense of sadness of like, even when he's going through everything and he's taking not positive ways out of things, to be able to kind of feel that sense of sadness for him, and to feel that sense of like, holy crap, he did go through a lot of hardships, and he did go through a lot of trauma, and you feel this sense of like, oh man, and you're going to see that later with Batman, and that conversation between the Batman and Joker of wanting to help, but you feel that, like you feel that, and so I think that's
and I think it just holds true to the fact that like everyone's got their own stuff, right? Everyone's got their own stories, everyone's got their own origin stories, whether it be good or bad. Things make people who they are today, right? There's a lot of stuff that Dave and I and Carrie knows too, that we've been through and that we've done in our past, right? That we had not going through those bad things, right?
Don't tell them about the bodies, okay?
Your secret's safe with me. And I think it's a good look, whether it's a fabricated memory or not. I do think that it's powerful storytelling, and it kind of gives you a good look at the Joker, where it's like, Yeah, like right. Frank Miller's Joker is different, right? Capullo's Joker is a little bit different. Who else had a good Joker run? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Brian Azzarello.
Right, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
but this one here, this take on it it's really good because it humanizes him in that way where he's not necessarily humanized otherwise.
Well,
Yeah.
and the only way to really feel how vile the acts that he commits in this is to bring you all the way the other way, to sympathize with him,
Yep.
and then push you as far away from that sympathy as you can possibly get.
Right.
And I just want to post this comment before we flip the page. Andrew said the transitions are such a simple and effective tool. Also, a subtle way for the artist and the writer to directly acknowledge the reader adds to the overall unsettling feeling like you're being watched.
Yeah.
This tells me that we're supposed to feel like we are reading this from his point of view too.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Andrew, that's deep, my brother. I love it.
Alan Moore humanizing the Joker is a feat of brilliance. It truly is, especially where we go from here.
Yeah.
You know, and so this panel also just another absolutely amazing panel right there.
Insane, dude.
Yeah.
Insane.
This is why I wore that hat in the,
the
reel that I did.
Right.
Because I just love it.
Imagine if that was your sleep paralysis demon. Dude, if that was my sleep paralysis demon, I would never go to sleep again.
Yeah, I know. You couldn't. And look, even just another great transition here from the effect to this.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, and another page of silent storytelling by Brian Bolland. You know, like we don't need words. He's like, this is like that scene in Tim Burton's Batman, where Keaton's trying to figure out who he is and like what he, why. And I love this page of storytelling, and then it kind of cuts into the other one. Let me see if there was
if we can go back to that previous page real fast, I just want to point out the coloring that you were talking about. So this is the second print, which is the original coloring, but look at the difference, man. Yours is just so that's so much better.
It is. And I understand why Bolland wanted to recolor it, because it's his intention for it to look a certain way.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
So you got Alfred coming in and just continues with the silent panels. And I do kind of love how you get some other iterations of the Joker on these pages, like throwback to some other artists.
Right.
But anyway, he's this is one of the most meaningful things, I think, that kind of really sets up the Joker. If you look at that bottom left panel where he says, been trying to figure out, he's like, I don't know him, Alfred, all these years, and I don't know who he is any more than he knows who I am. How can two people hate so much without knowing each other? Now, what I love about this line, it's a great piece of dialogue, but what it transitions into is Jim Gordon looking at the paper saying, I hate this. Whenever we jail him and we and think, please God, keep him there, then he escapes and blah, blah, blah. And then I hate it. So the word is the transition, not the image, but the word hate is the transition in that.
Yeah.
And this scene,
that was a good find.
Well, I the second time reading it this week, I kind of put my brain on, like, when I watch a lot of movies, I get this weird, like, try to find all the details in there and solve the puzzle of what the writer's trying to do. I watched a movie called, and this is just a little tangent, but I watched the movie Tar this weekend, which is new movie, came out last year. Cate Blanchett is up for an Oscar, and she's fucking brilliant in this movie. But like, much like this book, that movie ends and you are not sure what you just saw, what was real, what was not. Was there a mental break going on in the entire movie? So if anybody watches that movie after reading this, you kind of see some of the common denominator in those two things.
Called Tar?
Tar, T-A-R. Yeah. Brilliant movie. I would call it almost a balance of a thriller horror, but she might win the Oscar Best Actress, but she'd have to beat out Michelle Yeoh, which is going to be really hard. So, okay. Oh, sorry.
No, I feel like this is the benefits of reading the actual book and not digital, because you're able to see those transitions. Like, I would have totally missed that if you didn't point that out. I mean, I noticed that the keyword hate and like all of that when you flip, but like to be able to actually see the transitions are so much smoother. So highly recommend reading the actual book if you guys read this and not.
As a testament to that, I I do enjoy reading digitally for Marvel, for like newer stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but classics I always tell people,
I get that.
you know, buy the book because you're gonna want to read it more than once.
Yeah. And there is
And
something about reading that like paper, right? Like
of
flipping through
course,
that paper and holding the book and like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean I'm all for it.
yes, and
Well,
three. I think you're talking. This is the choir right here of three
Yeah.
people that love the actual
The book.
physicality
That's right.
of book, and I think almost everybody that watches this show is kind of the same way.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I mean, just a testament. So I got that GSX1 in a 4.0, and my intention isn't to slab it or anything, clean it, press it. I'm going to probably just to preserve it, but I don't, right? I don't collect slab books. I just don't. That's just not my thing. There's some that I do care about that I do have slabbed, but I got that in. First thing I did was I cracked that boy. I cracked it and I read it, and I actually read it like 2 or 3 times already. And I've read it before digitally, and I've read the reprints that I have and stuff. But there is something about holding a first print copy of an older book that you enjoy, and that's something that means something to you. So
Sure,
I totally
Read
get
the
that.
dang books.
yeah,
Read the books.
collect them and read them. You can
Like-
do both.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like read your books.
Read
Sorry.
read your books, and if you don't want to read your books, come over to my house and read my books.
There you go. Or
Just
he'll
start
come
looking
to
up.
your house and read your books for you.
Yeah, yeah. Or I'll
Yeah.
come to your house actually and do this to you, and then put the book, and then put the book in front of your face and make you read it. Okay, you're not gonna have a choice.
So we are approaching the pivotal scene that really puts this book into a different gear. But I do want to point out something very interesting and very cool, a little homage to Detective 27 right there. And he's going through his scrapbook, and that's literally the first appearance of Batman that he's talking about. I was not aware. I just did a little research. I was not aware that she was Batgirl at the time that this book was written. I didn't realize that, but I should have, I guess. So they're talking, and Barbara goes to answer the door. And what I do love is there's no onomatopoeia in here. There's no knock knock. It's in the. It's like it's forcing you to read the book.
Yes. And you know what? And that's so funny you mentioned that, because when he says, when she, I think it was either, I don't know which one it was, that said, oh, there's someone at the door or something. Was at the door. So Jim Gordon says was at the door on the top right middle panel. Sorry, the middle right panel on that page where he slunched over. He said was at the door. And when he said that, because I'm pretty good about looking at my onomatopoeias and picking those up from the art, right? And when he said that, I go, I don't remember anywhere it was notated that someone knocked. And I thought that was a really interesting device to use, right? That it does, it kind of forces you to kind of pay attention and say, oh man, what's going on here? There's a lot of that in this book, man. A lot of things, and also too, and we'll talk about it in the next page, but there's just artistically, there's just so much realism in this book. It's weird, dude. It's almost like the artist went through this himself, right? And we'll talk about it on the next page, but so where it transitions, so she opens the door,
and then the iconic panel of him standing with the gun and the brim covering his eyes.
And look at her eyes, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, just pure confusion, right? Fright, right? What was the thing we talked about earlier? Being scared and confused. That's it. Being scared.
Yeah.
And confused. That's it right there. So what I thought was interesting was, and nobody bring up any Disturbed references, but the way her body hits the floor, and if you look at the copy mug,
that's Drowning Pool.
Oh, that's embarrassing. So before her body hits the floor, right? Look at the coffee mug she's holding. Okay, so right when she gets blasted, she's holding a coffee mug, and just the physicality of it, right? Her body's going down, and she actually hits the glass counter before her coffee mug even hits the floor.
Yeah,
right? And that's just the full force of a human body being slugged with a revolver. I mean, it's right, all that weight just bam, and then that coffee mug's kind of following her. So for him to put that in there, and even the way the coffee mug's tipping like that, I mean, it was beautiful, man. I was looking at that just like, wow, that's a really, really cool detail you put in there.
It's tough to look at this and like have anything smart to say, because it's just so brutal. Yeah. But that's the point. I mean, I've seen some complaints about this and that she's used as a device, but like, if you are going to get at the heart of Batman, his parents are already dead.
Mhm.
Okay, you can't kill his
Right?
parents. Yeah. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
Oh
spoiler.
man.
Yeah. So this, I mean, and to have it be so random, like you would never see this coming.
Right.
I remember the first time I read this, I was like, holy shit!
Yeah.
Like this is a major character that the Joker just attempted to kill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very interesting too because he deliberately shot her there, which is even more cold and calculated because he actually wasn't trying to kill her
Right.
because he could have. Which that I just thought of that. Like that was something I didn't even think
Yeah.
of the first two times. It's like he
Yeah,
could have
he's
murdered.
calculated. Yeah, he's calculated. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't go there. He didn't go there to kill her.
No.
That wasn't
I mean,
his
he could have point blank shot her and not been it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that wasn't in the plans, right? And we'll kind of delve into that a little bit later. But
What's so interesting is if you flip the page prior, that last panel in that last bubble says, "I've had some interesting nightmares," and then it's like, "Oh, there you are." Like
Yeah.
it's just that
yes,
perfect
because
story and
she just got
transition.
done talking about the Joker and how when as a little girl, her dad talked about the Joker and told him about the white face and the green hair, and she's like, "Yeah, that was right stuff, nightmares." Or she said, or he goes, "I thought you'd be interested," and she goes, "Yeah, well, I had some interesting nightmares." Right. So talking about the Joker, I had some interesting nightmares, and she opens the door and
he's
who's there? Right, the
Yeah.
face of her nightmares. It's insane, dude. And I think right, and then you fast forward to that panel again where she's looking at him, confused, frightened. Her nightmare is realized literally right in front of her face. Right, it's crazy, man.
But the last word before you go into that whole page with
It's
no
nightmare.
wordage is
Right.
nightmares. And I just find that to be so like artistically well put.
You could make a case for the whole book being just a nightmare from each perspective of a character.
Oh yeah.
You
Right.
could make that case, you know?
No, for sure. So one thing I do want to talk about real quick with the coloring difference. So here's that page there. Oh my god.
Oh, it's there. There we go.
Oh, so yeah.
Okay, so here's this page here, and then when she does, this is the nightmare page, okay, and then when it goes to the page where she gets shot, that whole color scheme completely changes to a kind of monotone, nightmarish hell of a reality that she just lived right there. So it's a little bit different on yours than it is here, and I almost like this effect a little bit better than the newly revised one with the normal coloring. Just because it's a little bit more, I feel like a little bit more dynamic in the storytelling. But I think that's kind of interesting. And the whole and the rest of that kind of all the colors kind of change there. It's really cool.
I do find the coloring of Barbara, like the yellow, pops so much off the page.
Totally.
And I feel like that's such an artistic choice because I mean, just to show her pivotalness in the story.
Sure.
So to use yellow, it's just such an interesting choice.
Yeah, that yellow does pop for sure.
And you know what's interesting though, Angel, I've not read all of the DC continuity, but what you were saying about this not being canon anymore, she's still Oracle, isn't she? Still in a wheelchair?
Oh, maybe.
So I think that part of it is actually canon in DC.
I think you're right, Dave.
Yeah, I thought so. It's brutal, and you know, I've seen people complain about it, but it doesn't. I don't know what else. Like you shoot Jim Gordon, and it's a hazard of being the commissioner or detective. I don't know what he is at this point. You shoot his daughter, who, yes, she is a superhero, but not in that moment. She's just Jim Gordon's daughter, and that becomes an act of brutality. I see there's some very interesting, you know, like people have their own, everybody's got an opinion. To me, if we are looking at it as the perspective of what this is going to do to Batman, the man, he's not just a man. He's Batman. He's the protector. He's the you know, the savior of Gotham. Shooting Jim Gordon would piss him off, but I don't think it would drive him to the point of where he goes if it's not her.
Right.
You know, and I see that some people complain that she's used as this device and she's one-dimensional in this story, but we're not after a story about Barbara Gordon. We're after a story about Batman and Joker.
Right.
Now, what comes next? Very interesting to see how people interpret it. I've interpreted it several ways. It's assault. When I was younger, I thought it was something different. When I was older, I realized how fucked up it was. Like there's so many, like what he does, where the Joker goes with this. Um, it's just we never saw it before, and I don't think we've ever seen it since. He's never really done anything like this, but he proceeds to unbutton her blouse, and then that's the end of the scene as we know it for now.
Yeah.
The transition on this, another brilliant transition, but I'm not ready to change the page, but there's the transition from holding the glass to holding the glass.
Yeah.
But this, I don't know. I would love to hear both of your perspectives on this part of it, not the shooting, but this part of it. What happens after?
Well, the first thing, okay, so a couple things, right? So story-wise, it kind of really just shows we got to talk about it. Yeah, well, I just think that's a testament to him, to this just being another day in the life of Joker, right? In that kind of that mental state of it being not a vacation, not a celebration, but just casual. This is just right. This is just what happens. This is the facts of life, and this is just how it's going to be. And even just the way, right, in that middle right panel, that he's just kind of looking at his glass.
Yeah.
He has one hand in his pocket, like he's Alanis Morissette, right? He's got one.
He's on vacation. He's literally like he's enjoying himself on vacation.
He's got one foot kicked up while Jim Gordon's behind him getting the shit kicked out of him. You know what I mean? And to have that disconnect, really shows his character, his intention, his lack of no, I don't want to say lack of understanding, because he understands full well what he's doing, right? He's not an idiot. He's a smart guy. And it's funny because, right, you kind of go to the flashbacks where he was right before pre-Joker, and he kind of was an idiot. He kind of was a babbling kind of fool, and kind of stumbling over his words and kind of goofy a little bit, but wanted to be taken seriously. And I think that his character development over time is as much as he jokes, he's taken seriously, right? No one's taking him as a joke, right? And I think it's really cool. But one thing I want to talk about real quick is just this art, and it's kind of something I noticed as an artist. His shadow work is just absolutely crazy. I mean, look at
it's brilliant.
The scissors falling and the fucking right, the shadow of the scissors on his pant leg, and they even have a ripple to go with the curvature of his thigh. I mean, come on.
The shadow on his body as he's being punched.
Yeah.
The shadow that covers the Joker's eyes you don't see the Joker's eyes at all in this 2 pages, because we're already terrified of him. We don't need to be more terrified of him.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that the next time we see his eyes, well, I'm not going to go. Yeah. Okay. So I'm right. Because I just scared the shit out of myself. That's how I know I'm right. So the next time we see his eye, and I think and I was kind of looking at that before too. That's a device they use, right?
Sure.
Because the next time we see his eyes, the very next time, it's insane, dude, and it's crazy. And it's good. It's good. It's really good.
His eyes are used a lot, and Josh pointed out, Barbara mentions his eyes to Batman later, which we'll get to.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Anything else, Carrie? Anything on this that you want to add? Because it is the pivotal point of this book.
Yeah.
It's all crazy from here.
No, I mean, I think his whole demeanor is just so interesting, and I know Angel touched on that, but just the fact that he is so socially disengaged from everything around him is that telling mark of just a Joker in his mental state. And I think that's what I kind of gained throughout it, is just to be able to see this traumatic event standing in front of you, and to just look at your glass and wear a vacation shirt and pretend. Like, I just feel like that whole, to a rational human, that makes, like, it jars you, right? And that shows that grit, like you were saying earlier, of just like where the Joker's mind is in that moment. So,
which is interesting, because he is completely disconnected until the last panel, because she says, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "To prove a point. Here's the crime." Like, people that commit heinous crimes like that probably they're not aware that what they're doing at that time is what we all look as a heinous crime, where the Joker's like, oh yeah, I knew I was doing this. This is a crime. You know, here's
Calculated, dude. Calculated.
yeah, calculated. I mean, a true mark of somebody that is, you know,
and it's not uncommon to hear people. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Dave.
No.
But it isn't uncommon to hear people who do commit crime, like serious crimes that you hear on the federal news, to essentially black out during that period.
Sure.
Like they don't remember that at all. And so if you really think about Joker's entire life, right, like being a criminal act, in a sense, like, does he I mean, he does remember. That's like such interesting part about it, is that a lot of times, like, criminals to that extent, it's very interesting to read and to see how the Joker is like on a whole different level, right? Like he's that extremist, like, and so it's really, it's just interesting.
Yeah, that's good. That's true. That's true, and it's just a testament to his, like, his spiral into madness, right?
His brutality.
But being aware of that, that's great, and it just kind of reminds me of, right, being a kid, and
that's great.
Fist fight, well, like fist fight, getting in fights and stuff, right? My dad taught me, and I remember, and I'll never forget this, him telling me, you know, don't fight a crazy guy, man, because those guys got nothing to lose. And it's true. I mean, and this guy here, right, we're looking at kind of some of the shit. He's fucking crazy. He's got nothing to lose, right?
Right. That's so true.
We'll get into that a little bit later, but I mean, you don't have nothing. Who cares, right? At that point, to his point, everything's a big joke.
Yeah,
I can't laugh at it, right? And it's insane. That coloring is dope. I like that. See, mine's
mine's
different, but I mean, I'm getting like Schindler's List vibes from there with the red dress or the red balloon or whatever it was. But just the reds are showing. That's awesome.
They focus on the two things, and he's eating the prawns and the red hood, and that's it. So I thought that was interesting choice, and especially the fact that he's always eating some form of seafood.
Right.
You know, Johnny, there you go. Some people just want to see the world burn, and that you can't have the Joker without a sentiment like that. Some version of that.
And going back, I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm getting really chatty on this topic because it is so interesting. But Angel, when you had said he has nothing to lose, if you backtrack to that first verbiage when they were in the prison and Batman's saying, like, am I going to kill you? Or are you going to kill? Like it really shows the point. And you're going to see that at the end of the story too, right? Like it all ties in.
Yeah.
At the end of the story, like the Joker has nothing to lose. Like he's willing to essentially be there and die for it. And and so it's just,
it's good.
I don't want to jump too far ahead to the end, but
well, you know, the whole point is everybody that's in here right now is supposed to have read this, so we're not spoiling anything or jumping ahead because we all, you know, because time is a flat circle. You know, we're in the future and the past and the present all at one time. So
I'm reading the end of it again. I just finished that book, by the way. It's like 1,200 pages. That book is insane, dude.
I have to read it. It's on my list of books to read before I die, but I don't know when I'm going to die, so maybe I should read it. You know?
Yeah. You might live forever. Who knows?
I will.
Dave's going to be like on his deathbed.
How does it end?
You're at the climax and you just croak.
Is there an orgy in that? All right, we should. Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that. That's insane.
All right. So this scene just kind of sets up what's interesting because, you know, another piece of the Joker's quote unquote origin, if it's true or not, but it's basically the setup of the scene where he's talking to these two mob guys and they're going to do a job at the chemical plant where he used to work. And they basically are like, they're strong arming him into doing it, but you already get that they're going to sell him out. Because of the way they're talking about the red hood. It's like, everybody wears, somebody always in the crew wears the red hood. And what do they say? They say
the most
it was something like the
highest boss or something.
The mob boss.
It does it doesn't matter who's under the hood. We just sort of let the most valued member for additional anonymity. The tells you that we know he's getting sold out.
On that same panel, I'm getting like major, not as, because George Perez's work is very like, it's very detailed, but it's a lot in one panel, right? Whereas this is very detailed in more of an isolated way, where it's like, look at that dude throwing up into his hands.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Look at the dude throwing up into his hands. The guys to the left of him just having a casual conversation while the bartender's kind of wiping the glass down. I mean, this, to Mike, I'm a jerk. His comment earlier, what he said was, it's like kind of like watching a movie, right? Where yeah, this plays out like a movie. And you kind of look at the scene in this bar, right? And just kind of looking through the panels, and it's these details where you realize, okay, for one, there's mobsters hanging out there, right? So you already know it's not going to be. But then again, mobsters, I'm used to watching movies like Goodfellas and A Bronx Tale, where these mobsters are in nice places, right? But these ones in particular, you read the words and they're already scummy, right? They're already not good dudes, really shitty people. But you start looking at the details at the bar, right? On the left-hand page, second panel down, panel in the middle, dude is passed out and there's liquid spilling down. Is that his throat? Maybe, right? You go over to the next panel.
The cockroach, top right.
Cockroach, top right. There's a dog sleeping, or not sleeping. There's a dog chomping on something on the floor right there. There's a dog on the floor. I mean, what kind of bar is this, right?
you can feel the aesthetic of this bar. You can feel this bar, and also maybe let's say the other thing about it is it's kind of a timeless thing where we don't know what time this is supposed to take place, this flashback, but like kind of feels like Depression era, real life Depression era, 30s, 20s, whatever, bootlegging, Boardwalk Empire era.
Right.
But it's such a great, like, there's like, I can't add anything into that's gonna make it better than what you just kind of, painted the picture of.
It's really cool, man. It's really cool.
So we get the last panel. Nothing's gonna be same, not ever again. Pulling the leg off the prawn. And look,
dude,
doctor's holding on to Barbara's legs.
That's so good, because as I was reading this, right, I was kind of looking through all those transitions. I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense. There's some subtle ones, but that's kind of the only one that I was like, I'm trying to see the connection here, and I didn't see it. And so you kind of answered that for me, and I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is another really affecting scene here. You got Bullock in there smoking a cigar, and Batman's in there, and they're talking about Barbara, and Batman didn't know. Bullock says that she was in a state of undress, and he removed her clothing and started, they don't know for sure, but they kind of allude to the fact that like the Joker took pictures of her and she was naked. Now it's weird. Like when I was younger and I read this, my mind had a different interpretation, probably because I used to watch a lot of these fucking like really seedy revenge flicks in the 80s, like what's the name of that one with Charles Bronson? Death Wish. Like mixed in with like a brain of a 13-year-old who watches a lot of those movies, I was like, oh man, the Joker, Joker. And then when you kind of come to it, what he did was worse.
Yeah.
Like what he did was more brutal, because like it feels like, I don't even know how to say it, because I've never experienced anything like that, but it just feels like it was even like what he did was so much worse. And what he does with those photos is 10 times worse.
Yeah.
So
it's completely, I mean, just straight up dehumanizing,
that's the word,
violating, right? And it's a lot of these things. And it's hella funny, man, because I think when I'm watching movies or reading books or whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, how fucked up, right? Alan Moore obviously is a great storyteller, right?
Angel, I was thinking the exact. Yes.
These storytellers, right? I wouldn't ever think of something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And not to shit on these writers who do that, who have these great storytelling devices and stuff, but it's just how, right? How do you come up with these ideas and you put them in this way where it's flowing storytelling, but these brutal things splashed in between, and it feel like I'm just going through a book. And it's crazy, man. It's nuts how they do that.
And I think that's where you have to look back. Like, we don't necessarily know Alan Moore. We don't know him as a person, right? We don't know any of these comic writers, but like, we don't know what he's experienced in his life or the traumas that he's experienced, that he's, so like, but it makes you, as you're reading this, to look in that type of lens of why are they writing this? Why are they,
That's right. So when I brought up that point earlier about when she was getting shot, right? And I said you know, it's almost like the artist and the writer have been through experiences like that
Yeah.
before, right? Where they know how a body is, for one, supposed to fall or whatever, right? And it rings true to this too, like these ideas of abuse, these ideas of um, just violation and these real life experiences, and not only to tell them, but to tell them well and to tell them in a believable way. When I'm reading something that's right drawn in a comic book form, and I still feel like I'm watching a documentary, how, you know what I mean? It's insane, man. It's really good. It's really impressive.
Yeah, and once again, the emotion that he draws on faces. I
Crazy.
mean,
Yeah.
look at the terror in her
Crazy.
eyes.
Yeah,
It
it's really good.
It's that
Also,
nightmare.
yeah,
it
It's that
is.
waking up from a nightmare. Like
yeah.
that's essentially what it
That's
is.
right. That's right. Good point. Yeah, and see, and I like that art a little bit more. So on the original one, there's a lot more cross hatching on the shadows, but I
Mhm.
like that more. It's a lot softer and it's a lot more realistic.
Yeah,
That's really
the
good.
eyes pop, and
The
that's
eyes
really
pop, the shadows underneath the eyes, right above the cheekbones there. It's really good. It reminds me a little bit on mine, not so much yours, but on mine in particular. It kind of reminds me of like some Barry Windsor Smith art and some like his cross hatching styles and his shadow styles
Mm,
and the way that he does tears. And I think back to like, and we've all read Monsters already, so it's like going
yeah.
back to Monsters, right?
Mhm.
Where
That's so true.
Where she's in like the rain, right? She's crying, talking with I want to say his name was Tom, I can't remember. And she's talking with him, and it's just so reminiscent of that. And I'm a sucker for tears, man. I'm like the biggest crybaby in the world for one. But two, when I'm seeing panels where they're crying, Rogue, right, from Marvel, she has a lot of panels where she's crying. I'm just like, oh, it's so good. Tears are so good. But it's good. That's a great panel, man.
Yeah.
And where she says you didn't see his eyes,
Yeah, yeah,
that point what she's saying here is hammered home by what we're looking at.
Right.
You know, and the terror in what she's saying matches the terror in her face,
yeah,
and you know, and so you
yeah.
know, we know what Batman's feeling. We don't even need. He doesn't say anything. He
Right.
doesn't say anything to you know, like to reply to what she's saying because it's all written on his face. We don't even see the top of his face, and we know what he's feeling because any of us would have that. We would you know be incensed and destroyed
Yeah.
at the same time.
For sure. For sure. So yeah, so right here, right, she's asking him about her dad and you know what's going on with him, what are they doing to him? And I think it really drives home the point of just that like familial connection and how much she does care and love her dad. And obviously Bruce has a long history with his family, right? Or
Mhm.
Batman has a long history with his family. Um, but what I like the most is I think my favorite panel, aside from the tier one, is the panel right next to it, right on the bottom left. Just the way that she's grabbing him in pure desperation, and the way that she's grinding her teeth together, or not gnashing her teeth together, I guess I should say, and she's trying to hold back these tears and hold back this emotion, but she can't. Right? She's trying to talk through it, and you can see in the speech bubbles, you know, she's stuttering and she's obviously fighting through tears to get her point across, but there's that anger and there's that fright and there's all those feelings that this nightmare has instilled in her for, I mean, since she was a little girl, right? She said. So it's awesome, man. It's really good. They did a fucking awesome job with this stuff, man. Yeah, to your point, Dave, they could have no words in this entire thing, and it would hit the same.
It
Yeah.
would well. That's what I've heard many people say before. Is that the perfect comic is one that you could read without words,
Yep.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Um, John did mention he's got the Judge Dredd scowl, which says it all, which is very true. He does, and it's
Yeah.
coming from the artist, one of the first artists to draw Judge Dredd, so that makes sense. And that is it is a great page, Johnny. And this it really, like, you don't need any more brutality. You don't need any more brutality in the story from the Joker to be as angry as Batman, but you get more brutality.
Yeah.
And
They
here
went there.
and there's that transition again. Barbara grabbing Batman's cape and revealing the symbol, and these mutated looking fucked up demon
So
babies
creepy.
grabbing.
So creepy. This is the part where I was like, I don't think I can read it anymore because they are so horrifying.
I know they are.
And I think it
Sorry.
really drives home the point of that, like, I don't want to say like alliteration because that's more so like a literary device for words, but with imagery and alliteration imagery, I guess, is eyes, right? Going back to eyes and look at the
Yeah.
eyes bulging out. The guy who's sitting on the carnival, the old owner of the carnival, right? He's still sitting there. His eyes were
Yep.
crazy, right? That stone smile, the eyes are crazy. And it's just eyes, eyes, eyes. And the way you look at things through a lens and of being crazy and being right. So it's all these things, and like I said in the beginning, man, you can take it for how you want. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's all about the eyes. This book,
yeah,
it could have been called
eyes.
the eye. It could have just been called Batman, the eyes.
Yeah, the eyes. Yeah. Maybe that's where Tupac got the idea for All Eyes on Me.
Oh, I mean, maybe. I don't know if he was a Batman fan.
Yeah, he might have.
We'd have to go back and do some research to see
Yeah,
if he is.
I feel like it's so funny because now that we've talked a lot about Barbara Gordon and about the unclothing and all of that, when I first read this and I've gotten to this page that you have right up on the left, I remember talking to Aaron and being like, why did they have to make him naked? Why? Like, why did he have to? And I get the point of it, like, right? I get the vulnerability, I get the dehumanizing, I get the point of it, but I was like, did they really have to go there? Like, did they really have to go that far? But then it makes so much sense, like when you really break it down, because I feel like clothing, it really is that dehumanizing, and it is a part, right? Like that is a part of security for people. That's safety and security and the comfort. And so to have all that ripped off essentially is that really symbolic aspect of like that vulnerability and that dehumanizing.
Yeah, literally stripping someone down to their bare emotions, right? To their bare humanity.
Right. Which happened to Barbara, and then we also are seeing with
it's something that most most notably when I think about it, when we talk about it in that aspect, you think about like the Nazis or slave owners would do the same thing. They strip people down and eventually either kill them or wear them down to their deaths. But it is a
and you still see that now, right? I mean, yes, absolutely in the slavery days, but I mean, and I don't want to get too political or anything like that, but even you look at jails and prisons, right? It's still a dehumanizing thing that they put these prisoners through, and they're not really too much concerned about the rehabilitation like they say they are.
I mean, right? Even when people get strip searched,
right? That shit still exists, and it's crazy, and that is one of those ways to mentally break a person, is to Carrie's point, right?
I mean,
take their comfort, take their security away, and have them wear nothing and be 100% vulnerable. I mean, that's how you do it.
I mean, modern torture techniques. Like, like I had to write a whole paper about that in college. It's so dark, and so, but that is one of the first things that they do is they strip your clothing, and it's that vulnerability, that dehumanizing. You are no longer a person. Your emotions don't matter. Like, it's that psychotic, that psychological torture and that psychological warfare that you're essentially instilling on a person, and that's what we're seeing the Joker try to do in the story.
And I think that's so cool that they've done that here without saying everything that we're saying, because we just went on for how many minutes talking about that, right? The dehumanization of it all, and they just really kind of did that without actually saying that, right? And without even mentioning that he's naked or that they're stripping him of his clothes. And it's really cool, man, that they can do that to the reader.
It's one thing to strip him of his clothes. It's another thing to have these demon babies do it and use a cattle prod.
That's right.
Thank you.
Speaking of that cattle prod, what I really enjoyed about that panel there is on that onomatopoeia, right? Right. The way that it's written and drawn and has the little spikes, that's totally like shock and suspense stories, fucking golden age. Type of title, right? Not going diagonal like that, but just the way that it's kind of electrifying on the outsides, right? It totally reminded me of that. It was really, really cool.
And this, you touched on this too, but this kind of just came to me with when somebody goes through such a hard trauma in their life, right? And like they deal with some really rough shit, which we've seen in the beginning parts of the flashbacks of Joker and the origin. There's a sense of need for control, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a sense for people to feel like they have to be in control in some way. And there's that sense of power, right? And like power and control kind of go hand in hand. And I think we're kind of seeing that here, where the Joker finally gains control in his own insane way with creepy like all of it. But essentially it's that sense of control. And so it makes you wonder, like, is there a part of him that is still holding on to that? Is there something there that's essentially still like, and he talks about it later on, but is he he's burying that trauma, right? Like he's burying that trauma, but he still wants to be in control. And it's
Yeah.
like
Well,
you
I
can talk about going in two different ways, like Batman and Joker and all of that, which we'll see later. We'll touch on more, but essentially, it's how you deal with your shit, really, right? Like,
yeah, and I think it just comes down to the simple fact that, well, not simple, nothing. There's nothing simple about the human psyche, right? But being a loser your entire life and being someone who's been shit on your entire life, right? You want to feel some sense of power and control over others, right? Like,
right.
I mean, let's say I'm a young kid, not me, like I'm a bad example, but let's say a young kid getting bullied at school and is getting beat up and getting, you know, and then they start torturing animals and killing animals, right? You want to have that control over something else because you don't have control in anything else, right? Your parents are shitting on you. The kids at school are shitting on you. The teacher thinks you're a joke, right? And so what can you do, right? Maybe burn some ants with the magnifying glass, right? And I think it's kind of like that, where it's like that, to your point, right? That power struggle kind of thing, where now he kind of has that. He has his own domain now, ever since buying this little carnival amusement park thing, and he can kind of do these things as he pleases, right? Or so we're gonna find out later on if he can do it as he pleases or not. But
it's interesting that a study in power. I mean, you know what real power is?
What?
That. Got him.
No, real power is this oversized Zippo. Okay.
Oh no, I just wanted to do that.
What is the? Oh, okay, sorry. I'll text you after as to what the need is.
So the last couple of things about this 2-page, you know, Jim asks what he's doing. What somebody tell me what I'm doing here, and then Joker says, "You're doing what any sane man in your appalling circumstances would do. You're going mad." Now,
that's the point in time where his intentions kind of become really clear, right? I think where it's like now it's explicitly said and you can kind of see just by the way he's kind of kicking back, legs spread open, you're going mad, right? Where it's like, oh shit, that is what he was gonna do, and now the story kind of starts to come right and get stitched together, and boom, there's his eyes.
I mean, this is we're gonna petition DC Comics to rename this story called Batman the Eyes.
Batman the Eyes, because this, like I said, this is the first time you see, and you can go back. This is the first time you see his eyes.
Yeah, it is. It is.
As the Joker.
Yeah, I don't think that second.
Angel, I didn't realize that until you had said that, and then I scrolled. I didn't flip. I scrolled.
Right. It's the first time you see him since that second page. Yeah. But it and you know,
it's fucking frightening.
It is. It is. And this is where he goes on his little monologue about, you know, going mad and memories. And this is really kind of what ties that first flashback together in did it really happen? Because, you know, memories can be vile, repulsive, little brutes like children, I suppose.
Ugh.
But can we live without them? Memories are what our reason is based upon. If we can't face them, then we deny reason itself. Denying reason itself, not facing your memories, makes you recreate memories that never happened.
Sure.
And, although, why not? We aren't actually contractually tied down to rationality. Hence his justifying, making up his backstory just for the reader.
Yeah, and just and saying there is no sanity clause, right? There's nothing binding me to this, right? There's nothing. There's no reason why I do need to be in a reality and have these real things, right? It's really good, man.
Yeah. And John had put a point, I think that was on the last page, but it's part of why Bruce became Batman. He felt powerless when his parents were murdered and did the only thing he thought he could do to take control back. And it's true. It is. That is, you know, his origin. So this was very interesting to me. And obviously the transition on pages right here is just the doorway, right? The double door, but the madness. So when you find yourself locked into an unpleasant train of thought, heading for the places you're past where the screaming is unbearable, remember there's always madness. Madness is the emergency exit, and you could step outside and close the door on all the dreadful things that happen it could lock them away forever. It's interesting because we've all gone down the path. We're all humans. We all have memories, and nobody's life is perfect. So, we go back and something triggers us to think about, it doesn't have to be something super traumatizing. It just be an unpleasant memory of something. And I had one while we were doing this already, and I can't remember what it is because I just threw that shit right out the emergency exit. But it is very interesting. And I wrote something down, and this was just this is just like a thought that I had. It wasn't even a fully formed thought, but I wrote down, and I'll try and explain what I wrote. Is insanity without clinical mental illness just pretending that the past was different? So if you're not somebody that, suffers from a mental illness, but you feel like you're going insane, is that just like you taking your past and pretending like the confliction of like your real memories with the memories that you're trying to create to block out, and is he really mentally ill, or is he just somebody that is so cold and calculated and so in control that he goes insane by creating these false memories?
Yeah. So Dave, I can actually touch on that just from my
please.
So for those of you who don't know, like I have my master's degree in social work, and that's my background. So I in clinical social work. So a lot of psychology courses and all of that. But when people go through trauma, there's different coping mechanisms to essentially deal with that, and whether that is something. It doesn't need to be this massive traumatic event like the Joker has went through that we're going to learn about, but essentially it could be anything that is traumatic for that person, and they can decompartmentalize essentially, right? And I think that's what we're seeing with what you had expressed is people kind of bury it, or they decompartmentalize their mind. And a lot of times when you see people that go through really intense or trauma, and I can get like super nerdy into all of this, but I'm gonna save everyone that headache. But essentially when somebody goes through a really hard trauma, which there's a whole ACE study and all of this, it gets really scientific, but essentially you decompartmentalize, those memories go away, and you do recreate those memories essentially. And that is very common. And you'll see that a lot with sexual abuse survivors and child abuse survivors, where you'll see people start to or kind of block out periods of time. And then over time, it kind of slowly comes back. And I don't think Joker's even there where memories are starting to come back. Maybe they are, who knows? Like, right. We're not in his mind, but that decompartmentalizing. And when you're talking about insanity, it is essentially that pattern of repeating and not expecting different things, different result and all of that. But I think regardless, it might not have to be a mental illness essentially, but when people start to cope in not positive ways, I think that's when you start to see that happen. Sure. I don't know how much that makes sense. That was a lot of rambling.
It does. It does.
You said that a lot better than I could have. So I'm not even.
I don't know. I think.
Well, there's the confliction between like people that we use the word insane, right, as so many different ways, right? Yeah. And we use it to describe something that was so cool that we can't understand how cool it was, so it was insane. It was so insane. We use it to, as a general to describe mental illness, and it's something that obviously needs, clarification when we use that word. But I'm reading this. The second time this week reading this, I was seeing it through a different lens, and I must have just kind of switched something in my brain to look at it that way, and just his recreation of his past, as we're told, felt like insanity, but not somebody that didn't have control. It feels like he has so much control, and that's what's scary about it.
Yeah,
but I think it's also he felt. I think it's really easy for somebody to feel as though their world is falling apart when it doesn't feel that way to everybody else. Like for the outsiders to look into that, and then for that person to feel like their world's falling apart, which I feel like we saw in the first flashback panel when he was like, "I need to get you out of here." I mean, and that's when he took those extreme measures to essentially work with the gangsters to go into the chemical plant. But I feel like it's just very interesting because you don't know, right? You don't know. If I were to do a clinical diagnosis, I would say he's psychotic, like obviously, but right, like that would be like my go-to thing, but you don't know. And I think essentially, I think he is coping with trauma in a very not positive way.
Definitely not.
That's a good analysis. That's a pretty safe bet.
Mike just, kind of, backed up, the same thing I said. He's controlling us by making us feel a certain way about his history, like gaining the sympathy. And we're about to gain some more sympathy for him, but he's, he is changing his reality to justify his actions. So both of those things kind of true. And that transition right into the bar.
He's the OG gaslighter, dude. That's what
he
doing.
is.
Yes.
He is. Yeah, he is. And here we go with the cops come into the bar scene where they're talking about it, and they walk right towards the camera, which is the bartender. And what I also thought, and I forgot to mention this, but the hat that he wears as the Joker is the hat that the other henchman wears.
Yeah.
So he almost takes this. We'll get to it because we're going a little bit further. But you find out the cops tell Joker that his wife died in an accidental fire testing a baby bottle heater, and he doesn't know how to process it. I don't know how to process it either.
Right.
Is it?
I
real?
read it and I didn't know how to process it. I was like, well, that was fast. Okay.
Yeah. Is it real, or did they off his wife?
Sure. Yeah. Or two, like, right. To your point, is it real, or is it a convenient storytelling method that he's using, right, to gain that sympathy and to gain that, like, because, right, you call that at work. You say, oh, my grandma died, and the work tells you, well, how many grandmas do you have? This is the fifth one that's died this week. You know what I mean? Because really, who's going to say anything about someone dying, right, in your family? Nobody. So if that's a tool that he's using to gain that sympathy, it very well could be.
Too.
Yeah.
So it gains us some more sympathy. Now he's even further down on his luck because not only did his wife die, his baby died.
Yeah.
So, right, she was pregnant.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's right. And so he goes back in, and he's like, "All right, I'm not doing this job." And that's when the mob's like, these goons are like, "No, nobody." And they say, "This is one of my favorite things." Just a great line of dialogue is where is it? What's happening tonight? What's happening tonight? It's no little thing. Nobody backing out now remains healthy. No exceptions. That is just a great way to tell this guy that if you back out, we're gonna fucking kill you, or we're gonna break your legs and your back and your neck, and you're gonna wish you were dead.
Right. And I think it's I think there's a couple different foreshadowing things that happen in this panel, right? Where it's like nobody backing out now remains healthy.
That's true.
So it kind of foreshadows, right? Because he didn't back out, but he still ended up unhealthy. You know what I mean? And then you read the next guy, who I look at as more of the ringleader kind of guy, that kind of slimy, skinny guy. I think that he's more of the boss than the pudgy guy. And Joker he does kind of take to your point, right? He does kind of take the form of him a little bit, right? He already kind of did have a slender face, the Joker, but the hat and everything, and just being that kind of smooth manipulator kind of right deal, where it's like, yeah, that could have been someone that he projected his existence onto the existence of the Joker. But that guy, he says, no buts, man. Tomorrow you bury your old lady in luxury. Tonight you're with us. You get the picture. And the Joker says, yes, I get the picture, right? And you know what I mean? I get the picture. You know what I'm saying? And I think and I do think that, some people might say that's a stretch, but if you read some
not at all.
Alan Moore stuff, or any writer for that matter who's critically acclaimed, right? They do shit like that on purpose, and it's really
why they're so good at what they do.
Yeah, look at these transitions. I mean, you're talking about pulling legs off of a prawn, and then the next one is Barb recorded. Like I mean, if you can come up with that, I mean,
sure, yeah. There's a lot of those little things kind of thrown in there where you start reading it a couple different times, and you're like, oh shit, oh my god. Yeah, right. And the same goes for like any novel, right? That you kind of go back to. Like I read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut, for instance. I'll read a Kurt Vonnegut book 3 times over the course of a couple months, and I learn something new every single time. But also going back into it knowing how it ends already, I can start picking up those little things, right?
Mhm.
Same thing as rewatching a movie, right? Same thing. So it's really good. Just the little tiny isms he has in here that he kind of throws in that you kind of pick up each time you read it. Really
Sure.
good.
Yeah.
Mike says, I follow the rule of not trusting anything that's coming from the Joker. I agree. I agree. And Johnny said, he wanted to back your point up. Before we get to the transition, right? You got your crossed, head and hands with your but this I thought was even weirder. How about the Joker being right there? He's
Oh
just
my
sitting right
god.
back there. He's just that's the Joker. I don't care what
Yeah,
anybody says.
yeah.
That's the Joker right
It's
there.
the eyes, man. It's all in the
Yeah,
eyes.
it's all in the eyes.
Right.
It's all in the eyes. This book is all about the eyes and pictures and stealing your soul through the camera, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um yeah, so that transition's great. Gordon is just he is defeated and does not want to have anything to do with what the Joker's trying to show him, but it doesn't matter because the Joker he's everywhere. He's literally everywhere through this
Mhm.
fun house roller coaster ride. Um,
And this song,
the
like,
song, oh my
which
god.
you could
Yeah.
literally, it was so, as you read it, you like, I started singing, and I'm like, how does he do that? How,
You want to
how
you
does
want
Alan Moore do that?
do you want even a more crazy experience? We can't do it on the program because I don't want to get like copyright strike. But you go on Spotify and listen to Mark Hamill singing
It's
this
good.
song
I
and
just,
reading it.
I
It's
just did it.
amazing.
Yeah,
Mm.
I just watched it.
So you ended up watching all
Yeah,
of it?
I watched most of it.
Okay.
I caught the ending. I fast forwarded to like the last 30 minutes and I put it on. It was good
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
It was good.
the last 30 minutes of the Killing Joke animated
Yeah,
is
Yep.
great.
because
But
like the first half is like not this story.
no, it's
Right?
not.
I was angrily messaging Dave last night when I was watching it with Aaron
Yeah.
because I was like, I'm so confused. But that's a whole different
Yeah,
YouTube
it's a whole different
show.
conversation. But this is, I mean, yeah, the song you start singing it, then when you hear Mark Hamill sing it, it's like, oh my god, this
It's
is
good.
amazing.
It's good.
But
So
the
yeah,
lyrics are
Yeah.
like, I mean, it really shows reasoning. It shows rationale behind what he's doing and
Sure.
motive. Feel like, which
Sure. And I think it goes back to that gaslighting shit, right? Where it's
mhm.
like, here, these are the reasons why you can go crazy. These are the justified. Wow, that looks crazy in that color.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, it
Can
does.
I see yours, Angel? What is yours?
Here, what?
I'm just
Let's
curious.
hold on. Let's do that here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it looks completely different.
Yeah.
completely different.
Like that, the original colored version does give a good vibe, but I think overall, when you're looking at the
Yeah,
Bolland's recoloring, it just hits
yeah,
harder.
it hits harder. I think some panels, most panels in the recolored one, uh, are better, but there are some that I personally like just for divisive purposes. I
Mhm.
think, but overall, I think I'm gonna grab one of those. I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna grab one of the revised ones for sure because those colors are awesome.
Speaking of Aaron said Troy Baker performed his Joker Boy set at New York's Comic Con panel
That's
that he
cool.
was singing that song. God, I didn't realize that Troy Baker did some Joker. And if you don't know, Troy Baker is the I think the biggest thing people would know him from is he's the voice of Joel from The Last of Us,
Mm-hmm.
which is the greatest video game of all time. But that's a different story. Um,
It was the first video game I played all the way through. Well, partially Aaron beat all the hard parts, but
have you played the second one yet?
yeah.
Oh my
Well,
god.
I just watched Aaron actually, so I didn't
Okay.
actually. I'm not gonna take credit for that one.
Oof. All right. Well, I'm putting this out there now. If anybody knows Neil Druckmann, the creator of the game, I'd love to get him on the channel and interview him. He's a big comic book fan, and I would love to just talk storytelling with him. But that's besides the point. So
That'd be cool.
if you're watching this, Neil Druckmann, please. You're not, but please. All right. So I just saw something that I didn't notice the first time, but obviously this is kind of the culmination of the Joker's brutality right here is the pictures that he took of Barbara naked and literally bleeding out, as well as, we don't know at the time, but she's paralyzed from the waist down, but just all of that and having to force Jim to see that. But what I just noticed is this panel and this panel are kind of oppositely,
Yeah.
like, it's perfect. you go here and then you look at this one page and it's like Gordon's looking at this way and the Joker and the eyes.
The eyes.
Oh my God, the
Yeah,
eyes.
and it's kind of like that duality of good and evil, right?
Mhm.
Yin and yang, black and white, but also kind of trying to, and that's kind of his whole point during this sequence here, is trying to drive him into becoming, right, going mad, right? That's his whole point. That's his whole purpose here. So yeah, to your point, man, you look at those eyes, you look at those faces of being crazy, for lack of a better word, for two completely different reasons, right? I mean, you got Jim Gordon here who's looking at pictures of his daughter, for one, right, in that vulnerable of a state. And as like a father myself, and you don't even have to be a father to
No.
kind of imagine how that feels, but yeah, dude, it's insane. I mean, and you're bound, you're tied, you can't do anything except for scream so loud that your fucking words pop out of the fucking the speech bubble. You know what I mean? It's insane.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. And the Joker's face at that last panel, man. And again,
Yeah.
so here it comes again with him, right, popping out of the frame of the panel to kind of emphasize that, bam, I'm here again. Here I am. This is me. This is what I do. It's really, really cool.
It is. And then it shows you the lengths that he's going to, and it shows you how angry I like, and we get to it at the end that, Jim, the effect that he had on Jim, and what the desired effect was by the Joker versus what actually happened. But you see it in full force right here in the yeah, I couldn't imagine that.
It's good. And here we go with the unspoken panels again.
Yeah, Batman. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he's a silent force in this up until the end,
For
but
sure.
he is looking for his friend, and he is looking for his friend at any means, any costs. Like, the Penguin is terrified of him.
Yeah.
The Penguin is terrified of him. This guy's like, ugh. And this guy is he just
So,
shit his pants.
Who's the guy in the middle? And I'm not a huge Batman guy, but is that like the Corleone or that's not him?
I don't know if that's supposed to be anybody specific. I don't think it's supposed to be
What's his name?
what's his name?
Corleone or I can't
No,
remember.
no, it's shit. Carmine. It's Carmine something.
Falcone.
Falcone.
Yeah. Yeah, and these panels are great because, right, you have the left side panels where Gordon's going through, he's still on the ride and he's going through these different avenues of madness, right? And then also, right, conversely, Batman's also going through these avenues of madness, literally, or in the literal sense, where he's going down these different avenues of trying to find Jim Gordon and Barbara, and while his buddy Jim Gordon is going through his own journey and his own reflection of shit. So it's really cool.
And another great transitional panel. I kind of wish they were side by side, all three, but you got the rooftop and him looking at the bat signal. There's the bat signal being shot, and then here's him jumping to the bat signal.
Right.
Aaron asked where this rank in Batman stories for me. Top 5, 100%. I could, off the top of my head, my top 5 favorite Batman stories in no order are Long Halloween, the Batman Dracula 3-parter, Red Rain, Crimson Mist, and Bloodstorm, Gotham by Gaslight, and Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight Returns. Those are my top 5.
That's good. I haven't read any Batman really, so my top. So it is in my top 5.
If he tells us he's a Marvel guy, if you tell me you're a Marvel guy again, I'm kicking you off the street.
Yeah, I'm actually an indie guy. This is my top 5 only because I've ever read 5. Okay, that's the reason why. This is my top 5.
Angel, I was actually really when Dave was like, "Oh yeah, with Angel," I was like, "Oh, I didn't think he read DC, but okay, we're gonna go for it."
Well, it started last year.
No, I think it's great.
About a year ago, yeah.
But it's also curious. I was just curious to get what your take was. Like, would you continue to read more Batman now? Like, was this like an opening into the Batman world?
Yeah, Batman's on my pull list. So I'm pulling Batman right now. I have been for a while, or for the last however many months. Zarsky, 4 months or something, 5 months maybe. But yeah, so it's really just like either the limited series that I read or like one shots like this. I read the Spawn Batman was fun. Long Halloween was awesome. Year One was great. What else? Dark Knight Returns, fucking sweet. And that's kind of it as far as Batman goes. So I don't know any of his like crazy stuff like that was coming out in like the not crazy, but like his origin stuff, right? And his Golden Age stuff and Silver Age stuff. I'm not familiar with any of that stuff at all.
And I just like to add this. I've been saying stuff like this for my entire life, but I do personally believe that Batman is the greatest literary character of modern history. I mean,
Yeah.
or fictional character, I should say, because it's not just literature. This character's been around for over 80 years. TV, movie, video games. You know, this is a character that is, you know, in 500 years will probably be just as lauded as Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we're our kids, your kids, our parents, and us have all had experiences with Batman in our lives and in growing up with it. So it's really hard to say any character is more important or, you know, more popular than Batman in fictional
Right.
modern history. So Aaron put Long Halloween, Hush, Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, Snyder Run. Yeah, the Snyder Run, Court of Owls, Death of the Family, all that stuff is you know, top tier for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Death in the Family too. That's right.
yeah. Okay, so getting back to, you know, he jumps down on the GCPD roof. Bullock hands him the invitation from the Joker, and Batman's just like, all right, well, I'm out of here. And we see Gordon come to the end of the roller coaster, or whatever you want to call it, and he's a I was going to say a turnip. He's a vegetable, which I think a turnip's a vegetable. It's a root vegetable. Anyway, we're not here to discuss produce. So, you know, Joker thinks that he's turned him. Oh, he does. That's what he does. He says he turned him into a complete turnip. The rain puddles also, this transition, this image right here, we see a lot of different reflections of the Joker throughout this story, and all the reflections seem very emotionless, which is interesting to me. You know, and there's your transition from puddle to puddle, and he's staring down at it, and he looks like he's pretty much just out of it, and you know, he's about to do this criminal job.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where I really came into play that, like, this is the Joker, but this is he stole, or he is inspired by the look of this henchman.
Totally. When he sees
As
the
Joker.
redhead, yeah.
Yeah. So he's really seeing a reflection of his future self. Whoa. I just unlocked that there. Yeah. And this, you know, this is also a huge inspiration you can see a lot of the inspiration to Tim Burton of this in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film was inspired heavily by this for Joker's origin story. And you know, so this scene plays out exactly how you kind of, the reader, imagines it's going to play out. You know, cops show up, and these guys get pretty much murdered by the cops, or, you know, stopped by the cops brutally. This guy, this guy with the Joker hat, gets shot right in the head.
And I think what's cool too, aside from just him getting shot in the head, is the fact that you get shot in the head, right? Your entire body's tensing, and he shoots off his gun.
Yeah.
At the second he's getting shot in the head. I thought that was really cool.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah,
nice touch.
Totally is.
The scene is it's illustrated perfectly. Like, the pace of the scene is absolutely perfect.
Totally.
And you feel bad. Sorry. I felt as I was reading about it, and if you go back to the last panel, present day, the last word is injustice, and then it goes into this whole past scene, and you feel the sense of injustice for him. Like, you feel a sense of injustice for the Joker, and I felt so bad. I was like, man, this guy has been through, he just lost his wife, he just lost his baby, he's failing at being a comedian, he has all these things compounding, and then this happened. And you're just like, man.
But also, okay, so two different things, right? One, his wife and baby already died, and he still, I don't really think he necessarily agreed to it in fear of him getting hurt, because I do think if he was really that distraught over them, you know, dying, he wouldn't have really cared. He would have wanted to go too. So I think that was kind of the beginning of the end for him, as far as like still committing this act and still doing this crime, although you have no real reason or purpose to, right?
Right.
But also too, yeah, as far as the sympathy thing, absolutely. But then you got to remember, in the first place, he was gonna do this in the first place anyway, right?
Right. But then his reason
for
no longer
doing
is
it.
there, right? Like his
Yeah.
reasoning died. And
Yeah.
which that sounds so harsh when I say it like that, but like the
But it's
purpose
true.
is no longer there. And so he's forced to do something. And that's where you feel this sense of like, oh man, he didn't want to do this at this point. He
Yeah.
just kind of had to.
Right.
We just got a message from Klaus Wolfgang. He says, "Good morning, guten Tag, greetings from Germany." And I don't know why I'm watching this at 4:39 a.m.
Oh,
It's because you love comics. You
right.
don't love me because I'm not worth being up at 4:30 in the morning. And the two of them are both lovely, but you probably don't know them, so you do know the comics, Klaus. But thank you for being here all the way from Germany. And as we continue to talk about The Killing Joke, I just noticed something, and it will be too hard for me to get it on screen, but we know we're at Ace Chemicals because you can see it in the reflection.
Yeah.
Bottom left panel, there's a drum with a spade on it.
Spade on it. That's cool.
God,
Yeah.
the details in this book are amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So yes, he starts to get away. He's got blood all over his face from the guys that got shot. And here's what I love also. I don't even want to show this because it's so iconic, but you get Batman. So this is supposed to be one of Batman's first stories.
Yeah.
And you get the old
OG.
Batman, the OG Batman.
The long fucking right.
Yeah. And then this panel, this is it's so good. And Batman just says, "So Red Hood, we meet again." And it's funny that he threatens to jump because, like, why would like, okay, jump,
Yeah.
It's just like, all right. And he does, and he just jumps without really much hesitation because he does have nothing to lose.
Right.
And
I love that art too when he finally falls into that vat there, or the whatever it is. And I don't know if you can really see it on your coloring, but on mine it's kind of colored green. Let me see if I can get it in there. Oh my god, I can't see anything. So it's kind of colored green. and you can like see that foam, right? If you've ever seen it in movies, or if you've ever done this and seen your buddies jumping into a lake or whatever, right? The whites come up, and it's a really cool effect. And also the next panel down, so speaking of the details, right? And those down left, the smaller panel there. So you have the Ace Chemical Processing, so the chemical plant they're at. But if you look right next door, you see that
card company.
The card company that they were talking about. The original reason for the heist, and I don't even know if we ever talked about that. That was where they're originally going to go. That's what they were going to heist, and that's what they were going to break through. The reason why they're going through this chemical plant in the first place is because he used to work there. So he knew the security.
Right.
He knew all these details that these mobsters didn't necessarily know. And it just so happened to be right next door to this card place where they were going to do their heist or do their robbery, whatever it was. And I thought that was really cool to see that there in the background because you don't necessarily see it, right? And it goes back to those drums with the spades on there and all
that. Claus just asked what my favorite Batman comic is. And I mean, this is top 5. I don't know if I have an all-time favorite Batman comic because I have equal love for a lot of different ones. Yeah. Do you
either? Want to know why it's mine?
Would you say?
You want to know why this is mine?
Why?
Because I don't really read much DC.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This guy. I only like Marvel.
Yeah. But it's probably this one. It's probably this one for sure.
Aaron said, when is it believed how long Batman is into his career in this story? In Killing Joke, I'm not sure. I think he's well into the career. In the chemical heist, I think that's supposed to be very early, if not the first I feel like it's the first Batman story, this specific flashback.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I like the coloring on the original, and I like what Bolland did instead because it's devoid of all color until the liquid, until he's coming out and you can see it's green.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then we go another transitional piece right there is the use of the puddles. We come back to the Joker, takes off his mask, and well, I mean this to me is the most iconic drawing of the Joker ever.
Yeah, that's good.
This is it. And I love both versions, the recolored and the original. Let's it just, yeah, let's get that back up there. I mean, just both of them amazing.
So I had a question, and this might
Sure.
be super silly, and don't judge me when asking this, because I know there's a lot of different adaptations of Joker.
Uh-huh.
When this happened, that iconic scene, and I guess this is up to interpretation, but is it the chemicals that turn him into the Joker, like into a totally different being, or is it everything compounded that he just breaks into like that insanity piece?
In
You
this
know
in this version, I think you've got the
Yeah.
blend of both. You've
Yeah.
got 50-50.
That's right.
Yeah.
If we're looking at Tim Burton's Batman, it's the chemicals completely.
Right, like there's different adaptations, and I was like, because I saw this, and the whole leading up to it, I'm like, oh, there's definitely like, this was it for him. This is what triggered it, and he's just going to go into madness, and it's just going to be what it's going to be.
Mhm.
But then I know in other adaptations, it's the chemicals turns him into a completely different entity, because I don't even think you can technically humanize a lot of the behaviors, but
I don't think you could. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you were, I didn't know if you were finishing. Oh, he's all right. So we already established that he's at his, he's breaking. He's
Right.
he's really breaking. But it's kind of like, and I don't want to speak for either of you, but I can tell you I've been in certain really delicate mental states and just ingested some possibly illegal substances that really pushed me over the edge. Not to this point, but there are certain parts of my life where I had to stop doing, whatever. Well, let's just say drugs. And because it pushed me over the edge, and not in a way like this, but in a real way. Like this is obviously a fictional way. We don't turn into fucking green clowns when we do a lot of drugs, but well, maybe we do. But
I was just gonna say, I'm like,
yeah, but I took this as that at like the chemicals that he just ingested in his, whether it was a lot or a little bit, just pushed it over the edge.
yeah. And then you laugh at it to an extent, right? Like you get to a point where like you look at yourself, you see that you're white, which you see right before that iconic.
Mhm.
It's better on your screen. And you see him looking at himself, and I think all you could do at that point is just laugh, right? Like,
Yeah.
life sucks so bad, right? Like, let's just laugh about it, and then it's just so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of a testament to it's him becoming fully realized, right? And all the shit that he's gone through, and all the shit that he was put through, and then finally being something to laugh at, right? Finally.
Yeah.
Now it's like now I am that guy. Now I am that dude, right? And now I'm here. Now I can be not taken for a fool. Now I can be taken seriously in a way, right? For lack of a better word, I guess. And it's really cool. And and he talks about it here as far as like laughing, and he kind of has a really, really cool monologue later on. But yeah, so I think it is all it takes is one day. Yeah,
all it takes is one bad trip. All it takes is one bad day. I mean,
so good.
It really does. Like, reading this again enforced my absolute love for Joaquin Phoenix's version of the Joker.
Yes, dude. For sure.
Because it harps on this without the chemicals. Like, it harps on the mental illness part of it.
Absolutely.
It's just such a this universe, and I will stay to it. I don't I don't say this lightly, but the Batman universe is the best, the most well written of all comics in the superhero genre. Like, you were taking two characters, and we're talking about this book, which is almost 40 years old at this point, and we're talking about it, and then we're talking about all the different influences that it's had and all the different interpretations of these characters, and it's just like, I love it. Anyway, I could talk about Batman literally all day.
It's almost like you have a Batman tattoo or something.
Yeah, I know. It's like having this.
Wait, do you really?
Yeah, hold on.
Can you show it off? Show it off.
I've actually seen it up close and personal.
Show it off.
Hold on.
Take it off. Take it off. That's
I
fair.
can't.
All right, there's like a little bit of a glare right where your shin bone is. If you're gonna
It's actually pretty big.
There
It's bigger than I thought it was.
Do you know how much this
Um,
hurts just
okay.
stretching my leg up on the table like this? Anyway,
I'm glad I got you to get your daily stretching in.
there we go.
You know how I know you're my
That's
actual
awesome,
winner?
dude.
Thanks.
Because we're
Which-
wearing the same socks.
What is
Yeah.
Angel showing us right now? Is he showing us a tattoo or just his
No,
leg?
that we're wearing the same socks.
Oh, we are. I love that. All right.
I'm
Oh, we just lost half the audience when I showed my leg off. Damn it. All right. So yes, we get the most iconic panel here, and you know, there it is. The origin of the Joker is complete, and we still, even though we are we already know the brutality that he's put both Jim and Barbara through. We still gets us to evoke a little bit of sympathy for him with this story.
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know,
I read that scene and I remember being like, but he's not the rep, like he's not. Like I was like internally like, no.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. That's, you know, doing those transitions is having that sympathy with that kind of hatred for this character in a way
Yes.
where it's like it kind of forces the reader to kind of dive into madness and saying, how am I supposed to feel? What am I feeling right now, right? And I think that's a really, really cool device that they're using here in the storytelling.
So one of our last transitions is the ha ha ha,
Yeah.
and then we transition into the freaks at the freak show, the circus.
The freaks, baby.
Yeah, laughing.
Right.
Now, a slight callback right here, and I just noticed this right now. Okay, now maybe you guys did. The woman at the bar, the Joker guy at the bar,
The poster,
and his girlfriend.
Ooh.
That's who that is. Like, that's the fat lady at the bar, and the guy that we said was the Joker.
Yeah.
I did not catch that.
I didn't catch it either. Good catch.
Let's see if I'm gonna try and flip back. That's the two of them right there.
Yeah, that's right.
my
You're absolutely right. That is.
Anyway, I don't know. It's part of this. It's part of this kind of fever dream type storytelling where it almost doesn't. None of it seems real.
Right.
You know, and the last panel is really what hammers that home. But we'll get to that. So yeah, so they're all laughing at Jim. He's broken, and you know, Joker's going through his shtick about physically unremarkable. It has instead a deformed set of values. Notice the hideously bloated sense of humanity's importance, the club-footed social conscience, and the withered optimism. He's talking about the average man. So the Joker is playing us like a
I think that is a beautiful point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he even said too, like, I think the Joker wins if you feel bad, that's his goal. And I'm like, why did I not think of that? Like, I would be one of these people at the circus. I would just
I mean, that's the thing. If the villain uses sympathy to get you to think that, like, yeah, he's using sympathy. This whole book is such an interesting thing because we're reading it from the Joker telling us the story, and of course we believe him.
Yeah.
which makes me want to go out for a drink with Alan Moore. Like, how did you get up with this?
But you know what, though, dude, and it's like, yeah, we're going back and forth between, like, are these memories a reality or not, right? Or are these fabricated memories? But you bring up, and I didn't notice that panel with these characters, right? And you see this kind of thing, like in, let's say, for instance, like Shutter Island, for instance, right, with DiCaprio, where some of those characters from his fabricated memory and fabricated reality are people in the asylum that he's locked up with. Sorry, spoiler alert, I know the movie came out like 15 years ago, but
like 20 years ago.
So when you bring up this panel right here, that these were the characters in that bar from his memories, then yeah, you know what? It kind of drives home the point a little bit more that he is making that up. He's got to be, right? You know what I mean?
He's altering
right.
He's altering reality for rationale, essentially.
Right.
He's gaslighting us.
Yes.
He's gaslighter, dude. I'm telling
He
you.
is. He is. He's making us rethink everything that we've thought about this book due to the narrative.
Sure.
And he's playing us like a, God damn it, God damn it.
Michael
Fuck
said
you,
that's how
Alan
he
Moore.
got Harley. That's one of the and I literally I'm like I would be Harley Quinn. Like I would be dead. I'd be done. Like because that's me. Like I literally feel so bad for him. I want to give him a hug and try to like psychoanalyze him, and then I would just be Harley. Like I'd be the next Harley 2.0. So see y'all. Good knowing you.
So speaking of Joaquin Phoenix, these last the bottom three panels right there, totally Joaquin Phoenix in the Joker movie. Just the way he's doing the frown and that kind of theater, that kind of theatrical movements, right, that he's doing, and that kind of dumbfounded look of I don't know, man. It's just totally reminiscent of that. And when I was reading this earlier today again, that's the first person I thought of was Joaquin Phoenix playing that part and doing that.
Aaron brings up a good point. Carrie and Angela are going to start reading more Batman.
I don't need to read more Batman. I have this.
Well, there's more. There's
and
more.
I have you.
Hey, you know what? Read more Batman.
Ooh,
Pun intended.
Yes. The Batmobile in this is fantastic. Brian Bolland drew arguably the greatest Batmobile of all time.
And he's also like just paying tribute to my astigmatism by having those flashing lights in my eyes and the crisscrosses there. But look in the background. There's the carnival owner right there.
Yeah, he's still back there.
Yeah, he's still back there chilling, frozen on there.
And you know what the thing is? There's motion lines on him. If you look real closely, there's motion lines on him. Yeah. So he's actually moving on the thing. So, here's the thing. I didn't realize it until really talking about it today. Most of Batman is dialogueless. Most of it. There's very minimal Batman dialogue, and that's obviously on purpose because you don't need him to say anything. He's the Batman. We know his intentions by default. We know his intentions. And you don't need him to say anything to Joker when he first comes out of the Batmobile, because we already know, we've got the past, the monologue by Batman at the beginning is replaying for us because, Alan Moore's trying to hammer the point home that the two of them are on a collision course, and they always have been and they always will be. Yeah. But geez, like the smugness on Joker's face. It's just I would lunge at him too if I was Batman.
Yeah.
And it's just great action sequence here. We don't even need we just got the facial expression from Batman when he gets hit with the acid.
Yeah.
So and then I love seeing Batman's headlights coming closer in the background as Joker's talking. Oh, that's right. We forgot to point that out.
Oh shit.
In that last page, he's pulling up. And
that's good.
And the Joker's just so deep in his monologue that he doesn't even notice.
Good catch, Mr. No Love.
Yeah. Batman's word is law. We only need one word. So Joker runs off, and this is where Batman goes to get Jim out of the cage. And, it's the most kind of this Batman too, this iteration of Batman is the most warm we've ever really experienced. Like the scene with Barbara in the hospital, he's very fatherly, that kind of figure. And to Jim, he's very brotherly, he's like, okay, it's okay, let it come. And that's when we find out that Joker didn't break Gordon.
Yeah. I know, that's really cool.
He fucked with him. He tried to break him, but Gordon didn't break.
Yeah. And they talk about it, right? And this is where Joker goes off into his monologue, which is really, really good, right? And just really iconic about the one bad day. But it also really just kind of exemplifies that his Gordon's character, right? And also kind of Batman's too, right? These two guys, they stand for justice. They stand for kind of different avenues and different routes of justice. But
sure.
And Gordon didn't break, right? With all the shit that happened to his daughter, right? With the ride that he was put on, I mean, the ride of his life, right? And he comes out and he says, I want him brought in, and I want him brought in by the book. To have that mentality after going through what you went through is just absolutely crazy to me. Yep. I mean, it's just, when he turns his head, and again, right, here's that rainfall effect, that dramatic rainfall. Like, I mean, raindrops dropping, bouncing off his shoulder. and he turns back and looks at Batman, and Batman's not even looking at him. He's not even looking at Jim Gordon. After he says, "I want to brought him by the book," and then Batman says, "I'll do my best." So, and then Jim Gordon reiterates it again, by the book. Do you hear? We have to show him. So we have to show him that we can do things the right way.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting, and this is kind of something that you don't have to be the biggest Batman fan in the world to understand, is that Batman's credo is like not killing anybody, right?
Right.
But in the beginning of this, and during his whole monologue in the beginning, and then again, like you said, they do it right now in the page previous. He talks about that. He says, you know what? This is going to end with one of us dying, right? So he kind of flips that credo on his head and says, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but one of us is going to die. Kind of implying that it might be the Joker that dies, right? It might be himself that dies. But the fact that he says that and he kind of pushes that credo aside to protect his friend or his brother, like you say, right, Jim Gordon, or protect a daughter figure like Barb, right? It's really awesome storytelling, and it just kind of shows that dynamic part of Batman that you don't necessarily see. And this was Alan Moore's whole point, right? Bringing that grittiness and that darkness to a superhero character that doesn't necessarily see the kind of those lights, at least in this effect, right?
Sure. One of the other things that I'll point out too, that it's kind of always on my mind, is the movie influence. Nolan in Dark Knight takes that Jim Gordon, we got to do this by the book, and he says that exactly in that movie. And it just, once again, it can't be understated how much influence this book has on everything we've seen from Batman hereafter. And I love that. It's hard for me to read this Jim Gordon speech and not hear Gary Oldman's voice.
Yeah. So I love Gary Oldman, man. He's so sick.
Oh, he is. So then we go into the Joker and his monologue about the one bad day, and this is how we kind of know that, like, it's very funny. Kind of calls back to when Batman's talking to Alfred, saying, "How could two people don't know each other hate each other so much?" But the Joker knows Batman. He knows. He says, "You had one bad day. It was a brother that got killed. It was, it was something that drove you to this, to be this person."
What I found so interesting, yes, like all of that, but when he talks about that one bad day, I found that part so frightening and so terrifying, because I feel like us as humans, we've all been there, right? Like we've all had that day.
Right.
That was that breaking point for us, or that pivotal point where it's like we can break or we can pick up our shit and keep going.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm gonna assume everyone's been there, right? If not, like, life happens, like shit happens.
I had 3 bad years. So.
Right. Like, and you get to that point where, and a part of it's like, it's frightening, because what does it take to push somebody, right? Like, and that's going to differ for everybody, but essentially it's terrifying, but then it's also this really kind of oxymoron in a sense, because then you're looking at it on the other side of, like, I made it through, and I was kind of more like Batman in that sense, right? Like where you take that and you go to the other extreme, because you survived that one bad day, like Jim Gordon just did. And so, like, it's this really cool kind of, like, it's terrifying that to see that break, but then to also be like, shit, I'm not like the Joker. Like, I did it. I didn't let it break me.
You came out the other side
right.
as a better person. Although, some might argue that Batman came out the other side as just a terrible version of a good person.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. And
absolutely.
I think too, right, that line that he says there, right? That's how far the world is from where I am, just one bad day. And to your point, yeah, I mean, we all have those days for sure. But what's kind of interesting with this monologue here that he's saying, now this is present day. This isn't a flashback that he will point to. Okay, this is what's currently going on at the carnival, and he's still right. So we're talking about the sympathy that he gives the reader when he's going through these flashbacks. But now you come to this panel, or this set of panels here, where it's present day. It's not a flashback anymore. So it's not something that he's creating. This is actual reality, or more or less, right? Reality. And you still feel that sympathy, because you can relate to that, right? You can relate to that humanity, and the Joker being someone who is a dehumanized character, right? To have these human-like characteristics and this actual human-like psyche of, yeah, I almost broke, right? I mean, you guys know this, the stuff that I went through, and gonna kind of pull the curtain back a tiny bit, but just going through like the child custody stuff and a lot of things that can make you or break you, and just how can you come through on something like that, and how can you and it's true, man. And I'm reading this. When I was reading this, it just brought up a lot of those things, like, damn, yeah, we're not so different, you know what I mean? It just could have went complete. And it's kind of the same argument that I have for people that like complain here in the Bay Area, right, about homelessness and houselessness, right, where they're like, oh, we need to get these bums off the street. And I tell them every single time, dude, this is not, I can show you guys some Facebook posts, and I tell them every time, like, you guys are one missed paycheck away from being that bum on the street. And it's kind
most people are.
Yeah, no, me too. You know what I mean? And it's kind of the same idea, right? You're one bad day away from completely breaking and becoming like me. I'm not so bad. You're closer to me than you are to him on a pedestal or wherever it is that you put your heroes up, right? So it's really, really awesome storytelling.
But to flip that, and maybe this is my optimistic side of myself, I don't know, but what if you have one good day, right?
Sure.
Like, what if you have one good day? Because there's good days along with the bad days.
Yeah.
So it's I think holding on to that hope piece essentially, which was referred to way back in the comic. There was a piece that the Joker actually like had mentioned. He had mentioned the word hope, and losing hope. And so I feel like that is kind of to challenge that point.
Well, we all go through that struggle, and we try to use the good days are what are supposed to build up that structure. The bad days are supposed to be, like put them in the rear view, and use the good days to build it up. And, I don't think that plays into Batman as much because he is a wealthy billionaire that goes and beats the shit out of people at night. Right. But hey,
But you can relate to, like, that's the crazy part.
I can relate to that. I do go around and beat the shit out of people at night.
Oh, you do you, Dave. I'm not. I'm just saying the fact that the storytelling and the monologue was so well written that you, as a person, as a reader, are able to relate to both Batman and the Joker all at one time,
all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, feel sympathy for the Joker while also relating to him is like
insane.
That's that mind stuff that's going on there.
I think we got one more great transition right here. So it's the silhouette of Batman, which kind of looks like the bat symbol, into the silhouette of Joker right there in that next panel. And the art in this is so iconic and so beautifully, just illustrated out and plotted out. Oh, it's not fair.
That last panel on the left page with that face of fake sadness is.
It's all a joke. Everything anybody ever valued or struggled for, it's all a monstrous, demented gag. So why can't you see the funny side? Why aren't you laughing? And at the same time, he's not laughing.
Right.
It is very interesting, and it really does give you the sense of Derek said it. It's the key, feeling both sides, yin and yang, because we all know that Batman and the Joker are supposed to be, two sides of the same coin.
That's right.
And then we get this, and this look at the way he draws the broken glass.
It's so good.
It's there. I will say there's way too much shards of glass for the hole that Batman created. Who's counting? I love this panel too. I really fell in love with this panel, just because of the reflection of Batman and the way that it enlarges their facial features. And you look at Batman's nose and Joker's nose, and it's like 3 times the size in the mirror. I do love it. And then he just throws the Joker out the window, and it almost looks like the Joker's smiling. Wow. It almost looks like. Nick has a point here. Nick said, to me, it's important because society views those who have broken to their bad day as being outliers, when in reality, most don't want to accept they are capable of monstrous things. Credit to Gordon. Yeah.
Such a good point.
It is such a good point. This is such a thought-provoking, really, really interesting book. And I don't know if Alan Moore realized, obviously he realized the story he was writing, but I don't think he's disavowed himself from pretty much everything DC, because DC, that's a different story. But I don't think he realized that the impact this would have on people when they read it at a standpoint of like, trying to put themselves into one of the shoes of these characters, or both. And another fun thing I saw here, but we'll get. Actually, I'll just go through it. Because I Tim Burton supposedly, according to what he said and what Mike reiterated, is that he never read any comics. I don't know. You guys ever see Beetlejuice? This and the way that he puts the holes through the eye holes, the fingers through the eye holes, and pulls it down, and then this image of Batman fixing his cowl is exactly the same scene as when Gina Davis or Alec Baldwin they mash up their faces to try and scare the Maitlands, and then when Alec Baldwin puts his face back, it's the same as this. It's he does that exact same pose when he puts his face back together. Anyway, that's just
cool.
me.
That's cool.
But this is another great pace on a fight, and very Joker-like. Joker goes for the low blows. He tries to stick him with the thing. He gouges his eyes. He hits him in the head with a 2x4. He pulls out a switchblade, and then Batman. Reality comes back, and Batman just does his thing. Just puts his hand behind his, blocks the Joker, and just knocks the wind out of him.
Yeah, I kind of like that, like the Kirby style big fist there. The big fist coming back.
Yeah.
Total Kirby shit. It's awesome.
Yeah, right there. I always thought that, like, the one thing that we know about Batman, whether we never read a comic or we just watched the movies or the animated show or played the video games, but the man hits like a goddamn truck. I would rather be hit by the Hulk than hit by Batman.
That boy got some mitts on him, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he knows where to hit. He knows how to inflict pain.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Whereas, like, the Hulk hits you, you're dead before you even feel it. So nice eye on the Kirby fist. That I would not have thought about.
Yeah, that was a great comparison.
Yeah. So just this is classic Joker versus Batman, and Batman punches the shit out of him in the last panel. And look at the face. Just look at, like, that's the face that you just shit your pants while getting hit. We keep it classy here on West Coast Adventures.
That's right.
And then I actually, like, I laughed out loud at this panel because he pulls out the gun, the same gun that was supposedly the same gun we see him shoot Barbara with.
Right.
And it's just, instead of actually being empty in great Joker fashion, the flag comes out and click, click, click. We know it's empty. I mean, like, just brilliant. This is Adam West type, Batman. Right there.
But then I felt weirdly, twistedly bad for him. Like, it's so bad. Like, why did I feel bad for him? Why was I like, because I don't want Batman to die, but I was just like, why am I feeling bad for him right now?
Carrie, he's got you wrapped around his finger. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Well, it's also because we feel bad for him because no matter what, he goes up against Batman, he cannot win a physical fight.
No, hell no, dude.
And we already know that Batman's talking about one of them's going to die. And this whole story, this whole narrative that Joker's giving us about his backstory is to gain sympathy for this final moment.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, Carrie, the narrative is doing what it's supposed to do.
Alan Moore, man. Alan freaking Moore.
I mean, look, if Alan Moore taught us everything, you read V for Vendetta, you hate the government. You read Watchmen, you hate superheroes. So he teaches us to hate the things that he's writing about. So,
Alan Moore, if you ever watch this, we're going out for a drink because I need to.
Oi, you're going to have to come to England to find me.
That'd be so much fun.
He's a wizard in England, so he should be easy to spot. It looks like Hagrid.
That man got a beard and a half, dude.
Yeah, he does. He does. So, and there it is right there. The Joker's saying it. Well, what are you waiting for? I shot a defenseless girl. I terrorized an old man. Why don't you kick the hell out of me and get a standing ovation from the public gallery? He's calling out the Batman fans. Yeah. He's telling you why are he's like saying you should have sympathy for me because we all know this is what Batman's going to do anyway. Mm. So, and then Batman says he's doing it by the book, and we get what is arguably one of the most pivotal, important couple of pages of a Batman book ever.
Yeah.
And it's this conversation between the two of them, which turns into the Joker saying, "Well, it reminds me of a joke."
Mm.
So
And then
we
I
don't.
stopped feeling sympathy once we got to this part. Similar
So
to Batman.
here's the thing. All right, so I'm not going to read the whole joke. If you haven't read this book, I don't know why you're watching. Anyway, but we literally, yeah, we get to this
Very
point.
fair.
He tells him, all right, so I want to hear what both of your interpretations of this joke are, and then we can get to the interpretation of what actually happens after the joke.
Okay. So my interpretation of the joke is this. So in essence, what he's saying is there's these two guys in the loony bin, and they're going to escape or something or other, and they look at the rooftop across from them, right? And one of them jumps across, and he makes it across fine, and he says to the other one, come across, and the other one's kind of hesitant too. So the one that hopped across first shines a flashlight across to the other building where the other guy's standing. The inmate who's on the other side, who hadn't jumped across yet, he's like, right, how am I going to walk across this beam of light? Because that's what the inmate tells him: walk across this beam of light and you'll be fine, like a bridge, right? And the punchline is that, and he goes, "What do you think I am?" Oh, sorry, no. He says, "Yeah, what do you think I am, crazy? Right? Do you think I'm crazy enough to walk across a beam of light as a bridge?" And then the punchline is this. That's not the punchline. The punchline is this: you would turn it off on me halfway through, right? So the guy's so crazy, he thinks that it would work, essentially walking across, but it would turn off.
But he doesn't trust the other guy.
Right. So my interpretation is this: in looking at those two guys as Batman and as the Joker, and they're both, again, to what you said earlier, right? Both sides of the same coin. Just one is crazy enough to jump across and to do it and to get the job done that needs to get done, right? And then he's trying to so this whole time, so the page before, Batman is almost kind of trying to help the Joker, right?
Yeah.
Just telling him like, hey, we don't have to do this. I want to find a better way.
Maybe
right?
I can help.
And,
yeah.
Maybe I can help, right? He's trying to help these things, and that's what kind of reminds the Joker of this joke. And the guy that jumped across the first time, that's Batman in this joke, and he's saying, I can help you. And the Joker, being as crazy and as mad as he is, he's not going to fall for this, because Batman is going to end up screwing him up anyways, right? And the whole point of it is that he's so mad and he's so crazy that, yeah, he might believe that there might be some intentional helping there, but at the end of the day, you're still going to turn that flashlight off on me halfway through, and I'm still going to get the shit end of the stick, because that's what my life is. My life is the shit end of the stick. That's what I got from it.
Spot on with what I was.
Spot on.
Spot on.
More.
I gotta get my English accent going if I'm gonna go Seattle.
I agree with that. I will add this. I think that joke is interchangeable, and it shows that now I'm the president. It shows that neither of them will ever fully trust the other one.
Sure.
And that's really, to me, what that joke is about. It's like, Batman can't trust the Joker to go to rehabilitate, and the Joker, like you said, can't trust Batman because he's Batman and he always wants to just beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And Carrie, anything that you wanted to add or on that?
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah.
And so they start laughing, and it's this great moment of levity. It's Joker's
his arc becoming realized, right?
Yeah.
His whole character development.
And he's laughing, and then Batman starts to laugh, but that's where we get one of the most polarizing couple of panels.
Yeah.
He grabs we hear the sirens, we know the cops are coming, and Batman, the look on his face from the silhouette, he looks just as crazy as the Joker, and he puts his hands on him.
Yep.
And it's this, age-old debate. Does he kill the Joker in this last panel? Does he choke him out? I mean, the only thing we see is Joker's, the only thing that when I was looking at this, I was like, the way that his hand goes from, kind of this to this.
His hands are falling.
Yeah, or they're, they're tensing up. And you don't really get anything else, but the rain keeps falling, and the sirens, we hear the sirens stop, or we see the sirens stop. But what do you think? Carrie, what do you think? Do you think he
I
kills the
do not
Joker?
think so.
Yeah.
I'm convincing myself that he
Yeah.
that he did not kill him. One, because I don't. I think going back to what Gordon said about do things by the book, I think that's one reason. And then two,
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my like optimism, but I feel like the police are just coming and he's passed out and he choked him to unconscious and the police are gonna come and take him away and he's gonna be back in prison.
Yeah,
That's my prediction.
taking him back to Arkham.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Has
that's
to be Harley. No, just
Yeah.
that's true. I think it's also storytelling, and I think it leaves it up for debate on purpose, and I think it allows these conversations to flow, and that's really what keeps books alive, right? You read any Chuck Palahniuk book, or you read any Kurt Vonnegut book, or Stephen King novel, or whatever, and it's just some of the endings hit, some of them don't, but a lot of them leave them open to interpretation because literature like that, and this is at the end of the day literature, that those survive by people talking about these things that they can leave open-ended and these things that can be interpreted differently. But just kind of going back to like the whole joke, right? You know, if you look at the first couple pages when he's having his flashback, you know, when he's talking to his wife, you know, he said, no one laughs at me. They're not laughing at me. Why isn't anyone laughing, right? And then finally at the last page of the book, you have his arch enemy laughing at a joke that he said, right? And if that's not a total full circle character development arc closure thing, I don't know what is, man, because it was done beautifully, it was done perfectly, and it left it open ended like that. I mean, it's awesome. This book is considered one of the greatest comic books of all time, and for good reason.
For good reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he murked him though. And I'm just saying that because I want him to murk him, baby, because I'm Mike. That's why.
Derek said it's open to interpretation, and Andrew kind of put in the ending of The Sopranos where the camera goes black and we don't know what happens. And I think it is definitely a 50-50 shot, open to interpretation. When I first read it, I didn't realize that was, you know, I was young. I was not an experienced reader, and I don't think I realized that. But reading this, you know, a couple of times this week, the joke kind of leads you to believe that, yeah, you can't trust either of them to make the right decision. And I go back and forth. The more I think about it, the more I think that he actually did kill him. But then, you know, I stop and I'm like, oh, he didn't. It's Batman. He wouldn't. He wasn't going to. He had no reason to. But I think the two of them realize at the end of this book that it'll never end.
Yeah.
And we as the reader realize that it'll never end. So this story goes on, and maybe it's just, you know, it's just a never-ending thread of multiverses where there is never resolution between the two of them. It will never resolve.
Which is the definition of insanity.
Exactly. Trying to do the same thing over,
right,
repeating and getting the same result.
Yeah.
So it's like they're insane in their own ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like which again is that argument, that pendulum of polar opposites.
Yeah, and also, I mean, them two as characters, they're symbiotic, right? You can't have one without the other. Batman essentially made the Joker, right? And Batman needs the Joker. He does. I mean, at the end of the day, he needs that, and that was kind of like the whole thing with Death in the Family, right? His whole thing was like, you don't need any sidekicks. You don't need any sidekicks. You don't need this. You don't need that. All you need is me, man. That's it. Because we're a universal constant, you and I, no matter what. And it's really good. And I think it's, to your point, right? This kind of really solidifies that relationship between the two of them, where they can have these brutal fights and these brutal things. But I think the realization of them just always being in a cycle, it's going to be out for the end of time. It's going to be that for the end of time.
Yeah. Derek asked us our thoughts on the animated rendition prelude to the story. I saw it once, and we talked both of you today separately about it. It is very forgettable. The only thing that really makes the animated movie great is the fact that it's Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, but the added stuff to the story was absolute trash. Like, it just did not need to be in there.
Yeah. So I guess that's my same opinion. I feel like up until the point where you saw Batman walking into Arkham, which is like where the story begins in the comic, I feel like up until that point, I get the purpose. I get what they were trying to accomplish with having Barbara being more of a there being reason.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't think it was needed at all. I think they should have just stuck with the story. And I think they were trying to fill time too, but I feel like
Well,
to make it a movie.
I think more so than that, what they were essentially trying to do was, I don't want to say retcon, but this was looked at as so like misogynistic and so right. Barbara's very one-sided and one-dimensional in this, and they kind of used her as just a plot device that they essentially tried to like fix that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's more so kind of what they were doing.
And look, I don't want to take anybody's experience away from feeling that way about Barbara if you're a woman or even somebody that just, but there's nothing scarier to me in my taking in of this than somebody that did something so pointedly and there was no warning. There was not, like that to me it drives it home. I don't knowing more about Barbara, I know who she is. I'm reading Batman. We already know, like, I don't know. I just didn't, I don't see how people can say that about this book, but I'm also not everybody. I'm just me, I don't live other people's experiences, so I can't tell people how to feel, but that's just in my opinion.
Yeah. I just had an epiphany.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is actually an epiphany or if this is just me, just because somebody else probably thought of this. I feel like the ending of the story essentially was like, was Joker's plot the whole time to break Batman? Which is what right.
Well, yeah, Nick said, and that kind of
I think that's such a good point because I'm like, is that essentially the final joke, like the last laugh, essentially? Like, is that all of this is pre-plotted to essentially try to break Batman?
Right.
And if we look at the end that he kills the Joker, then maybe it was. Maybe, that's the whole thing that it kind of, does ram home. It's like one of us is going to die. We're on a collision course. It's suicide for one of us and it's murder for the other, because if Batman doesn't stop the Joker will eventually kill him. And if you let somebody knowingly kill you, then you could do that as suicidal. And the person that does the killing is the murderer.
Yeah, Nick, that was a good point.
Maybe he's kind of talking to himself here, right? So, man, you know what? You might be right. Maybe that was his whole point. Maybe this was a suicide mission because when he's talking to Gordon, when he's putting Gordon through the funhouse, and he's talking to Gordon, right? And he's saying, somewhere dark and cold, filled with the damp, ambiguous shapes of the things you'd hope were forgotten. Memories can be vile, repulsive little brutes like children, I suppose. So maybe his child, right? That was killed in his wife's belly. But can we live without them? Memories are what our reason is based upon, and right. So kind of already talked about that. So maybe that's kind of an internal confliction that he has, where it's like I can't deal with the shit anymore, and it's going to his past, and it's showing these things from his past that maybe currently, while the current story is taking place, he's having these memories come back.
Yeah,
so it's not just for the reader to kind of get the sympathy or whatever. Maybe he's actually thinking of these things while this plan is being put into place, and he does want to go on a suicide mission because now he's feeling all these feelings, right? Yeah, that's good.
Which is true with that is what happens with trauma. Like memories start to come back slowly over time. And I feel like that's kind of, if that is the case, if you want to take that interpretation of it, I mean, it makes sense.
Right.
And there's the interpretation too. Was any of this real? Was this all just, one of
that's Mind Bob.
yeah. Like you could just look at this as being like just take this image, right? And we are looking at what the Joker's telling us to look at, and only what the Joker's telling us to look at. Right. He is the director, not Alan Moore, not Brian Bolland, but the Joker. I got to say, and we don't have to leave, but I just want to say this has been the most enjoyable but enlightening discussion I've ever had about a comic book. And if all comics were this good.
True, yeah, that's true. It's Alan Moore, really. It's not
yeah, well, I mean that's the thing. Like I think anybody that knows me for any amount of time in the capacity of comics, Moore and Gaiman and like Garth Ennis and guys like that, I want to read all. Like I sought out all their work because it's thought provoking, not just And then we talk about art. Looking at Brian Bolland's art,
Yeah.
We're not worthy.
Right. Yeah.
We
It's
are
really,
not
really
worthy.
good. It's really, really good. But you know what? One thing I did want to talk about too that I wrote down in my notes here, but I didn't get to is the cover. Right. We haven't
Yeah.
really touched on the cover. So I think with now knowing, right, because you read this, I mean, it's one of the most iconic covers of all time, hands down, one of the most iconic covers, one of the most iconic Joker covers, right, or just covers in general. But before you read this book, you're just like, wow, that's a really crazy looking cover. And then you read the book, and then you look at this cover again from the perspective of Barbara. Okay, Barbara naked, afraid, bleeding, right? And the Joker taking pictures of her and saying smile. That's how I look at this.
Yeah.
Is him taking photos of her while she's in that vulnerable state, right? And then it gives you a totally different take on this cover, and it's really good. And it's a really, really cool image to use because this image isn't used in the book at all. Right?
No, none of these are.
And so that kind of, again, to that open interpretation kind of thing, that allows you to do that. And it allows you to do it in a couple different ways, right? With Barbara taking pictures of Gordon. But that's, yeah, it's good. It's really cool.
Yeah, Derek, I agree. Pretty amazing to be sparking a conversation to this degree. I mean, it's and you know, not to blow smoke or toot the horn, but it's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this book club, because I want to talk about comics. Yeah. I don't want to just sit here and scream into the void, comics, you know. I want to have conversation with people about comics. Again, there you go. Speaking of reading your comics.
Daryl, my brother Daryl right there, man. If you guys, just quick shout out to Daryl. Daryl is the man. You guys give him a follow on Instagram at Read Your Comics. I think it might be read.your.comics. But that
look for that logo. His logo is the same. His icon. He's iconic. Yeah. I God, it's just, this is such a good story, and it's just the beginning to dive into all the great Batman stories. I mean, this is, in my eyes, definitely the best Batman Joker story ever. I mean, it's, you know, there are other great Batman stories, but none that really go this deep into the two of them.
Right.
But we've had countless things, you know, movies and the animated series. I mean, Mark Hamill. I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's on a different level, but Mark Hamill, arguably the greatest Joker of all time.
Right. Yeah, it's animated.
Yeah, because when you think of the Joker's voice, who do you hear first? Do you hear Heath Ledger? Do you hear Mark Hamill? Do you hear Jack?
I hear Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I hear Hamill too.
I hear Mark Hamill. What was it? Oh, I have this hardcover at my house called I don't remember how many books it is, but it's like some number of books, like let's say eight of the greatest Joker stories
ever told. Yeah.
I don't remember how many it is. I haven't read it yet, but I'd really like to.
Isn't this? I think the cover of that is.
It's from. I think it's from Miller's Joker. I think.
Okay, because they did a version of it with a Bolland cover, and I think it's the one where he's holding the fish. This one?
No, that's not the one I have. The one I have, he's more like wearing kind of. Yeah, I wish I had a picture of it. Let me see if I can find it.
Greatest villain of all time, Darth Vader or the Joker? Who?
Ooh,
right?
Don't ask me.
I mean, when you think about it, though, like, is there any greater villain than either?
I'm gonna say Joker.
Yeah,
I'm going with Joker.
Okay, I'll go with. I don't know. I mean, all right. I hear and see Heath Ledger whenever I hear the word Joker. See, like, there's all different, versions of him. We've got Read Your Comics, said Dr. Doom. I love Dr. Doom. Oh yeah. Shit, who did that? Yeah, I know that book. I used to have that book. All respects to Dr. Doom. He's great, but he doesn't hold a candle to the Joker or Vader.
I think it's different, right? I think they have different reasons, and I think they have. Well, I know they have different methods of doing the things they do and different motivations for doing the things they do. So I think that there's that like sinister shit with all of them equally, I think, but just different ways of going about their business. Because I do think Dr. Doom, I mean, he's like one of the most powerful dudes, and it's not just because of his tech and not just because of this, but he's also part witch, essentially, right, from his mom's side, and he has these right, with humankind and his royalty stuff. I mean, he's royalty, right? So I don't know, man. Doom's up there for me.
I'll put Doom as top 5 or so. I think he's one of the most iconic looking
That's true.
villains, but I think I would have to go with Vader just because Vader's story is the perfect it's the perfect arc. It really is the perfect arc. Like there's no redemption for the Joker yet. Like we haven't seen the redemption for the Joker in the way that we've seen the redemption for Vader. I mean, it is the perfect arc. And it's kind of sad. I mean, Vader's is arguably the saddest because we see him as a kid and then we see him as a teenager.
No,
And when
I don't know. I don't know. I'm still going with Joker. Okay. My mom's gonna kill me because she's like a diehard Star Wars fan. Literally, if she ever watches those, I'm probably gonna be disowned as her child. But I really, I do think he's overused. Essentially, I mean, I think that's that iconic like Batman Joker. I mean, even you see it at kids' parties, right? Like, I feel like it's everywhere. But, I don't know. I feel like his actions are more psychological. Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Vader's actions are love based. They're love based to a
Right.
point. To a point,
Right.
they're love based.
Where Joker, I think he's just.
I think we can relate to Vader.
Yeah.
You know, and
I'm gonna have to think this one over.
All right,
Give me
all
a
right.
week. Give me a week. I'll get back to you.
Nick brings up a good point, but I'll put Magneto and anti-hero these days. But Magneto would be a fair comparison to Joker. Both have had terrible things happen to alter their perspective as a society as a whole. They apply that broad sweeping brush to all of society. So right, their actions are a little bit too much. Thanos is great. I mean, Thanos is great, and depending on the perspective that you're reading or watching Thanos from, if you look at Thanos from the actual Infinity Gauntlet storyline, he's more towards Vader than he is anything else because he's in love with death and the personification of death. But
and that's really and that whole thing really was to appease death, right? And this whole reasoning behind that, it wasn't for this self-fulfilling prophecy that he had. That was to appease her, essentially.
Sure.
He was in love with her, right? And he wanted her to know that he's capable of doing these things for her and blah blah blah. But I can't speak to the Vader thing because I've never seen Star Wars.
Yeah, I thought you were done watching. I thought you watched them all.
Oh,
you never finished it.
I got up to the second one, and
I get it. It's okay. So
I grew
up on it, so I feel like when you grow up on it, it's a little different, right? Like when you're a kid and you're being forced to watch it. Like, I mean, I actually never liked Star Wars growing up until I was older, and then had a different appreciation for it.
I think part of it. What I think.
Yeah, dude, you're gonna.
You know what though? I'm sorry to cut you off, Angel.
No, you're good.
I won't dox him, but my closest friend, not my oldest friend, but one of my closest friends, my ride or die, has never seen Star Wars before. I've grown up with people that have never seen Star Wars, and I've learned to live with it.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is. It's my older brother he loved, and he still loves Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, but he loved Star Wars growing up, and he started getting into it at an age where, and we're super close. We're like 11 months apart, but the age we were at when he started getting really into it, I was maybe 9, 10 or so, right, somewhere around there, and so he was about 10 or 11. And I wanted to be so much not like him that I actively went out of my way to dislike him.
Yeah.
It was just being a little kid, and it's just kind of one of those things that kind of stuck with me. And it's fine. I've seen them, and I saw the ones in the theaters right when they're coming out. And I went to, when I was a kid, all the other ones that were coming out with, the actor.
Oh, you should not see Star Wars.
Yeah. But I remember seeing Jar Jar Binks in the theaters, but I hadn't really gotten into the old ones or anything like that. So I gotta give him a retry for sure. I owe it to you guys.
Well, and here's the thing. Oh, sorry, Carrie. Yeah.
No, I don't know, because I don't I'm not like, let's sit down and rewatch Star Wars. Like, I watched them, I liked them, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like I don't know. People are gonna say that too, but it's not my thing.
It's also about the environment you grew up in. I mean, I grew up in, and I think I saw it. I don't think I was old enough to see. My parents probably were not taking me to the movies to see Empire, but I definitely saw Jedi in the theater as a kid. But it was just my childhood. My childhood was that.
Right.
Um, I think it, showing it to Uriah at some point would
Yeah.
probably give you that sense of like,
Yeah, you know what? Good point.
like I think it's one of those things that, like Sesame Street or anything, if your kid grows up or you have a kid and you show your kid that, or you're as a kid growing up and watching it, it just becomes this thing because like, I don't know. I guess it's like kids growing up with Harry Potter. It's this
Yeah.
universe that you can get lost in.
Right. That is true.
I agree with that because that's
Yeah.
kind of how it was essentially. Like my mom was always into Star Wars and also like really, really, really shitty sci-fi movies. Like the ones that you would just like randomly pop on the sci-fi show and then like
Yeah.
people were like, what is happening? And there'd be like a shark octopus that would come and attack you and kill you. Like that's the stuff that she would watch.
Yeah, Sharknado and shit.
Yeah, literally. Like
Yeah.
she thought that they were good. Like that's the concerning. So like for me when she was like, but I did, and I think growing up in a household that like was very Star Wars focused, and like growing up with an older
Sure.
brother and stuff like that, like I think it was just kind of it was gonna end up that way, that I was gonna be watching Star Wars and liking it. So
It's also, when you think about it, the equivalent of it now is like if Uriah or your daughter's not old enough to know what the hell's going on.
yeah, she's 2.5.
Yeah. But if Uriah grows up watching the MCU, like it's a universe that
Sure.
like and I don't care like where you fall on the scale of like things that have happened in your life. As kids, we all need a place to escape to. And Star Wars provided this place for most of us in our 40s and 50s and maybe even older and a little bit younger to escape to. And so that's why it just holds such a such a place for a lot of people. I do want to pull it back to this, and Derek said I'm still tripping at the ending. What if they really just laughed at his joke together and understood each other in that one moment? And I before I can even think it, Nick chimed in. It was a Dirty Dancing moment.
Hold him up in the air.
Yeah. No, I had the joke of my life, and I never laughed this way before. Yeah, there you
That
go.
should have been your intro song for the show.
Yeah, that's good. That needs to be. That's so funny.
Well, this Killing Joke album has been completely derailed by Star Wars. Yeah,
Star Wars has a way of doing that.
It does. Star Wars, and that's the thing. Like, there is, I like we could talk about all the Marvel and DC characters we want, but there is nothing that is really like pop culture brought people together like Star Wars has over the 45 years. What'd you say?
It's a cultural phenomenon for sure.
It is, and it's not even a phenomenon. Like, to me, a phenomenon. Well, yes, it is a phenomenon, but now it's just part of culture. Now it's just part of it. Like, so we could do a whole show on Star Wars, and maybe I'll have to do a SunDAVE sit down where we talk and we get a couple of people that have never like really gotten into Star Wars and a couple of people that are really like get each end of the spectrum in there and just see what happens.
I've never read a Star Wars comic. I can be the first to say that.
I have only read like the first couple years of the Dark Horse stuff. There's a lot, but a lot of it's great. A lot of it's really great.
There's a lot.
So
I thought we should do a watch party with half of you guys who are like super diehard fans, and then half of us who have never really seen it, and we'll just chime in throughout the movie. Be like, so what does that mean? So what is he gonna? Those friends you take to the movies for the very first time, you've never seen a movie with them, and like talking, and you're just like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Oh god. There's nothing that would drive me to be Joker level crazy than people talking in the theater. It's like,
yeah.
Seriously, like for 2 to 3 hours, just shut the fuck up.
Dude, it's so bad. Yeah, that pisses me off.
Yeah, read your comics. He said, as much as I love the movies, I've already struggled to get into the Star Wars comics.
I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm one of those people. Like I read Dark Empire. I read some of the first Dark Horse stuff. I read some of the first all the Timothy Zahn novels when I was younger. But then I kind of clocked out. Yeah. So, but any last thoughts on The Killing Joke?
Really good. amazing Alan Moore work. Everyone who's in here, I'm sure, has probably read it. But if you're in here just to hang out, whatever, and you haven't read it, pick up a copy, read it digitally, whatever. If there's no way you can buy one or no way you can read it digitally, you let me know and I will send you my copy personally. You can borrow it, read it, and then get put on a list for whoever else is in here. And we could just pass it around and share it with each other so that we can all read it together.
Yeah,
because I do think that everyone needs to read this. And if that is the case, and if this book does end up getting passed around, when you're done reading it, come back to this show, come back to this on the rewatch, and then kind of listen to the ideas that we talked about throughout the show, and then revisit that if you've never read it before. So, but amazing work, man. Just really good. This was an awesome book that you picked out for us to have the SunDAVE sit down with you. And thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me on the show again. And what you got there?
Well, Carrie, I want to get your final thoughts, and then I'll put my final brains in there.
Okay. I mean, I was gonna say a masterpiece was my wordage. It's funny because I love doing these types of book club type things because it pushes me to read things that I wouldn't normally pick off the shelves. And what's crazy is like we own this book. Like I have it. I just have never I read my own stuff. But it makes me want to dive into these characters more. Like I was asking Aaron, I'm like, what's a really good Barbara Gordon run? Like, 'cause now I want to read more into her. Like, and so it kind of forces me to want to read more, which I really appreciate for somebody who does not read a lot of DC. So
want to read more.
Yeah, I do want to read more, and I also want to go for a drink with Alan more.
You want to how about that?
But I think no, I think it was great, and Dave, I appreciate you doing these. I think it's amazing and awesome, and I appreciate you having me on.
It's my pleasure to have people that I enjoy hearing talking about stuff that I love. I mean, what else could I want from this show?
Yeah.
People talking about the things that we all love, because there's way too much negativity out there in general, and negativity in the comic book field, and I don't want any of that. I mean, the only negativity we ever have on this channel is that Comic Tim guy, and he's kind of positive. He's kind of positive. But I want to say that, yes, this book is a masterpiece, and it never gets old. It's just
timeless. It's timeless.
Yeah.
It is. And I plan to do more Batman stuff in the future. And actually, Nick just asked what book is next, and I'm happy to announce. I don't know what the last Sunday of this month is, but we're going to be doing Weapon X, Wolverine.
Weapon X, baby.
Yeah, the singular, a beautiful vision by Barry Windsor Smith, and you can get this in trade paperback format. Cover price is probably like $15.
I never read it.
So good.
Well, guess we're gonna have you. Guess we have a reason to have you back to hear your thoughts about
hide
that.
Under my
Yeah, Wolverine, and it's my first.
It's
my first favorite Wolverine story, and I can't wait to talk about it because
it's a good one.
It's iconic, and there's a lot of nostalgia, but like a lot of emotion that comes from this for me. Because I read this, and obviously I'm older. I read this when it came out, and the hype was real, and the hype lived up to the hype. But so that'll be next month. I'll be posting about that. We'll have a couple people on, probably these two very, very well spoken human beings. The one wearing the
well spoken, but
the one wearing the Weapon X shirt, but. I just want to say thank you to both of you for doing this, and I know it's a little late for you on the East Coast, but we make time to talk about comics.
Oh yeah, it's almost 1 a.m. over there, huh? 12.
No.
It's almost midnight. Yeah.
Can't do math here.
Oh, looks like Johnny's going to come in. So for everybody out there who's watching this now or on the replay, thank you for watching, and thank you for coming and joining SunDAVE Sit Down, where we talk about comics instead of just pretending that we read comics. And I'll be back on this Wednesday with West Coast Wednesday, selling you all your favorite books, or the books that you don't want that I just have to burn because they don't sell. And please watch my video that I dropped this morning. It's a read through of the first appearance of the Joker. Hit the like button on the way out, and you two stick around. But I'm going to close us out as I bring you in with probably a very glitchy and stuttering. All right, here we go. Bye.
Bye.
Oh shit! Oops. Let's do that again.